Shouldn't have been here.
actually discussed on the comprehensive reading plan that there was no evidence of professional development for a certain thing. And so I wanted to chat with him about it because we actually have staff who's been trained in that. And
Good afternoon. Today is May 3rd, 2016, and the time is 2:04 p.m. I'll call this broad workshop agenda to order. We'll begin with Strategic Plan Focus Area 7, Allocate Resources Strategically. Dr. Atkins, did you have any comment before presenters begin?
Yes. Before I turn it over to Ms. Chandler and Mr. Alton, I just want to say that this is the first part of what we're going to talk about here. The Let's Talk platform is hopefully an effort to for us to become more efficient and be more responsive to our customers, our parents, and our community. I sent recently to all of you a spreadsheet that gave you some data in terms of email volume that comes in, and that's just, of course, that's just in our office, and it really doesn't reflect what we see district-wide, but at least it gives you an idea. Our idea, or our hope, is to be able to respond as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So Ms. Chandler, Mr. Alton have been doing that, exploring those options, and they are here to talk to us today about the Let's Talk platform. So with that, I'll turn it over to either one of you, whichever one, Mr. Alton.
Okay. Well, thank you. Today we would like to provide a demonstration and some information around a platform that we are considering for not only community engagement, but also a mechanism for us to work more efficiently with our internal customers. And the platform that we're talking about today is called Let's Talk. And I'm going to turn it over to Jesse for a quick demonstration, and then of course we'll take questions.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to spend some time with you. Thank you, Dr. Atkins, for the opportunity, Vice Chairman Fisher. Pleasure to be here. My intent today is to give you a very quick introduction to the Let's Talk solution. You'll notice on the screen here, or on the screen in front of you, we're looking at my laptop. We have a number of tabs open, so we plan to show you some examples of how this is playing out in some other school districts around the country, and then take you into a working demonstration of how the solution works. I think it's important to note this work today is already going on in the district. The goal is to make you far more efficient and productive with your time. They're really across the country when it comes to communication in school districts is not a new activity. You do a tremendous amount of communicating, so much communicating that most of those efforts are pushed out to constituents. We find districts are struggling to organize the amount of information that's constantly coming into the system. And while you're letting your community know just how collaborative, inclusive, and transparent you are, you've created an awful lot of silos. Those silos create risk, exposure, liability, and blind spots for the leadership team. And I would also say missed opportunity, because there's an awful lot of good going on in the system that many times goes unreported, that when all of that activity resides in various silos and they create blind spots for you, as I'm sure you can appreciate given the roles that you're playing in the district, by the time information makes it to you, oftentimes it's already too late. The volume is turned up so high on a particular issue, all you're really left to do is to react to those issues. The goal of Let's Talk is to not create yet another vehicle in which people can communicate with you, but to centralize where all of this information comes. So on any given day, with a district of your size, you've got roughly 800 plus people on any given day speaking on behalf of Lee County schools. We call them key communicators. They're simply defined as people in the district who are perceived to be in a position of authority, who are fielding feedback from customers, taxpayers, staff, parents, and students, and whose responses are considered authoritative and help shape the brand and perception of themselves and of education as a whole. So we would ask you, what are they saying to your customers? Are your customers walking away feeling better or worse as a result of their interaction with you? But then where do those conversations take place? There are 7 different channels that are bringing information into the system. We can go to the website to communicate with you, and we'll show you how that works. Your phones still ring, so people are calling you. I don't know of an administrator in public education that wish they got more email. I think email is probably the most pervasive communication channel we have because it's really all we've ever had. And increasingly, more and more of that conversation is happening on social media. Multiply that number by the number of people that are speaking on your behalf, and you can see how quickly this aggregates. So the goal is to not create an 8th channel, but to bring all of those channels into one place. So with your permission, this is your website. I'm going to quickly go to show you 3 other school districts of similar shape, size, and scope, and then we'll do a demonstration of how this solution works, and happy to take questions. And I'll just stay up front. I'm a native New Yorker, so I think I'll just have my New Yorker hat on and talk just a bit faster than I normally would. I don't think we'll share anything that you're not already dealing with, but hopefully we'll connect some dots that make this more efficient for you. So with your permission, I'm happy to go and do that. So up the road from you, Polk County Schools, this is a 100,000 student district. You'll notice on the district's website, there should be a Contact Us section for the district. So this plays upon the idea that you're already giving your community the ability to connect with you, and this, I think somehow, here we are, Contact Us, and we automatically bring you into Let's Talk. Everything from this point forward is customized to the district. This is not a one-size-fits-all implementation. So everything from this sort of top right-hand corner to the bottom right-hand corner is all customized to your district. So the welcome message will help you create this welcome message so the community understands how you intend to use this. And really the gist of this message says, for as much as we have to say to you, there's nothing more important than what you have to say to us. If you see something that doesn't look right in the district, trust us enough to bring it to our attention, because we promise it's not right for one of 2 reasons. If it's broken, we may not know it's broken, and if you bring it to our attention, we make a promise and commitment, whether it's 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, that we'll fix this. Or there may be a policy written somewhere that prevents us from doing this work any other way. If you bring it to our attention, we promise to explain it to you. And that's really the gist of this message. And then everything from the names of these topics, the color, and the order in which they're presented are all customized to you. And as quickly as you can think of a topic, you can add and remove topics. The beauty here is each of these topics is auto-routed to a particular team of people in the district. So if I'm reaching out to the district now about immunization shots because I have some question, comment, or concern about that process, we're not creating a new workflow for someone. You'll know in the district who's responsible for dealing with those issues. So when we have an issue about transcripts, we're going to route this to the team of people that are responsible for student records and transcripts. So whether it's transcripts or facilities, you can see they've identified some student-related topics and some staff topics. The form that we'll ask the customer to fill out is the same, and it's very easy. The form says, what is my question, comment, suggestion, concern, or believe it or not, compliments, you'll get them. What's on my mind? What am I writing about? Am I a parent, employee, community member, or student? Do I wish to receive a response from you? And I can fill out my contact information, and I'll submit this. Now, this isn't magic. Many districts have forms that you can fill out. The challenge, though, is when I fill out that form and I press submit, somebody gets an email. Typically, an Amity Chandler will get that email, and if Amity's not in a position to respond to that, the forwarding happens to try to figure out it becomes very difficult to measure, monitor, and track what happened to it when it's in an email. So we're going to do something a little bit different with it from here. So that was Polk County. Let me show you Wake County, North Carolina. This is a 150,000 student district in North Carolina. From their website, they're in the first phase of their implementation. You will not see any evidence of Let's Talk. However, when you click on About Us and you go to the superintendent's page, you'll see no email addresses and phone numbers. But when I click on Contact the Superintendent, you'll see here I can begin to fill out that form, have that information routed to the team of people in the superintendent's office who will respond or make sure that this gets into the hands of the appropriate people so that they could manage the response. You'll notice here this can be done in languages. We can support 40 languages. The way languages will work is not only will this translate into that language, but when the customer provides feedback in Spanish, we'll translate it to English. Your team will provide your response in English, and then we'll translate it back to Spanish for the customer. So when you think about a population of people that you're not connecting with potentially simply because of a language barrier, I think this opens up tremendous opportunity for that to happen now.
Excellent.
This is one of the first implementations we did 3 years ago. This is Fort Bend, Texas. This is a suburban Houston district with about 75,000 students in it. You'll notice their Let's Talk icon here, and this brings you into their implementation. You'll notice a variety of topics, departments at central office, some student and staff topics, and every high school, middle school, and elementary school is here. Now, you can also go to any school building in Fort Bend, Texas, and you'll see a Let's Talk button for each school. So typically, parents know their school more than they know the district. As we phase this into the system, the training and professional development that folks will get will say, you know, you can always call me and email me. We're not going to take that away from you. But even if you're requesting a meeting from me, if you go to Let's Talk, you're guaranteed a better, faster, and more formal response, and that nothing will slip through the cracks. It's also, I think, important to note, and I'm just going to go ahead and click on this Model Community School District. This is a district we simply use to demonstrate how the solution works. It doesn't exist. You can also create unlimited pages for Let's Talk. So while you'll see here we've listed every department, in theory, each department can have their own page with their own topics. You'll notice when I go back to the district's homepage, this district is in the process of working through their budget, and they've created a page simply to allow folks to weigh in on budget-related issues. Many of our clients will put Let's Talk behind a firewall and open it up to HR-related, professional development, curriculum and instruction-related topics that staff can participate and weigh in on. You'll also notice there's a ribbon here on the right-hand side of the screen. We can place this ribbon anywhere on the district's website in any size, but essentially I wanted to ensure that your customers were always one click away from you, and that no matter how deep into your website they got, when your customer needed to connect with you, they didn't have to go far to find you. So if I was a student needing to figure out how do I get my transcript, I can simply type in TRANS, identify that I'm a student, I have a question, put my information in, hit send, and now this is off to student records. So we'll just go ahead and show you how all of this now sort of comes together. We found for as much communicating as you're doing, people want to know what they want to know when they want to know it, not when you want to communicate it to them. So we'll just highlight an issue that I know is sensitive no matter what community you're in. Take something like boundary changes or redistricting. You'll communicate those changes for a year before you make them, maybe longer. But I may not be paying attention for 10 months until now I'm ready to have this conversation with you. You don't want my knee-jerk reaction or the misinformation that I heard in the checkout line of the grocery store or on the soccer field. When I'm ready to talk to you about that issue, you'll notice there's a topic here for boundary changes. And when I click on this, I can populate every one of these topics with content, whether it's pictures, video, links to presentations. So I may be coming to you very hot and bothered over this issue, but you're saying, Jesse, there are 5 things you need to know about boundary changes. Take a look at this first. Now tell me what you think. So we'll just use this example. We'll say I have a question about busing, and my question is, how will routes change as a result of redistricting? I'm going to play both roles here. I'm also the parent in this example, and we'll fill out some information here about me, my name, phone number, and email address. We'll submit this, and now this is the first of 2 notifications that your customer will receive. The first notification is what you see here. I think the most important part to highlight is this here,
Within 3 business days.
which is what your responsiveness is going to be. So absent Let's Talk, what is the responsiveness and culture now in the district? Are you a 24-hour, 48-hour, 72-hour response
Clear.
district? Do you make a commitment? I think it's important to under-promise and over-deliver, so we'll work with you to make sure that you're doing this with fidelity. But you owe it to yourself if you're building a culture of responsiveness to start doing this, because someone down the road may accuse you of not being responsive, and that could take days, weeks, or months to recover from if you don't have a way of, beyond the anecdotes, showing them what you've done. And then certainly, in most instances, you're probably highly responsive. you want to make sure that you can celebrate that as often as you can. Absent having the data, it's just an anecdote. So this is the first notification. The second notification I received as a parent was an email, a receipt that says, thank you for submitting your dialogue. Your dialogue was given a number. It was assigned to the appropriate people in the district. You do not have to submit another dialogue. We have received it, and we'll help customize the content of that feedback as well. And so where did that information go? So as the principal or the person responsible for boundary changes in the district, I received a notification that said, somebody just submitted a dialogue, you're the owner of that feedback, go do something with it. And so when I come into the system, you'll see in the back end of Let's Talk, we're now looking at the dialogue that Jesse just submitted from the district's website about busing at 217. It's not been opened. It's again a P2 priority, which we consider to be normal. It's been assigned to boundary changes, and I happen to be the owner of it. How we remove the silos, you'll notice, hopefully from where you're sitting and the screens that you're looking at, you'll see anything that looks like a computer screen is your indication your customer went to the district's website to give you that feedback the way we just did. But people still receive emails in the district. Now, I can't make the community forget that they know your email address, but the faster I can remove your email addresses from the website, because again, a lot of silos and blind spots get created through those emails, in addition to a lot of spam, because bots go out and scan for email addresses on websites. So this will help to alleviate some of that activity. So we can bring your emails in. When you make news locally or nationally, now you go to Google Alerts to see those news articles and items. Rather than having to go to another silo, we can bring them into Let's Talk.
Okay.
And you'll notice there's an icon here for Twitter. Phone calls come into the system, Facebook comes into the system, Instagram comes into the system. So again, we want all roads leading to Let's Talk, no matter where that feedback comes from. So as an example, I'm just going to open up this dialogue. Jesse submitted this dialogue about busing. It's now 3 minutes old. It's tracking against that 3-day response time. There's some information in the top left-hand corner about Jesse Lieb, the customer. You can see information here about the dialogue, so I might determine this is of low priority. You'll notice this went from unopened to in progress. It was submitted to boundary changes, but it was a question about transportation, and I'm wondering, am I really the right person to respond to this? And so I think I need to invite Brent, Carl, and Charlie, who are part of the transportation office, to be a part of this conversation.
Minimize this.
This is the equivalent of what happens when an email comes to you and you start forwarding emails around to various people in the district. And so these 3 individuals were just notified. I could write comments to them. So whatever collaboration is happening with the team. So the entire thread of the conversation, the internal collaboration, can happen within Let's Talk. I may choose to pick up the phone and call the customer, and in which case I want to just write a note. Had a call with Jesse, we explained the issue, seems to be satisfied with the result. So if something happens to me and Amity needs to take over tomorrow, Amity has context and perspective on where I've been with this conversation, and we're not starting from scratch. When I'm ready to reply to Jesse, I can pen my response. I don't know if this happens as much as we see it in many other districts, but feedback often comes into different parts of the district, and everyone responds differently to the same issue. So when feedback comes in now, you can create a library of approved messages.
Thank you.
So if boundary changes is the hot topic in the district and department heads or principals are getting hit with that feedback, they can select the specific message so that they're not struggling to figure out who do they get help from, or how do they make sure their response doesn't create more problems for the district.
I rebooted, so I'm waiting to see.
You'll notice in this top left-hand corner, not sure if you can see from where you're sitting, but above the phone number and email address, there's a number. The number next to the email address says 210, the other says 198. If anyone would like to take a guess as to what that represents, we'd love to hear from you.
Was that the order in which it,
Number on this topic?
Close. This is the number of times this individual has reached out to you.
Oh my goodness gracious.
So I happen to be one of those customers that likes to reach out. When I
So-
click on this number, this will show me every instance in which Jesse Lieb has reached out to the district, whether I did it through the website or through the phone or through email or through social media. Oftentimes, this is the kind of customer that likes to call everyone on the leadership team to either get the answer that they're looking for or to create more chaos. And it's really just, I may never satisfy this particular individual, but very important now to have a level of clarity and confidence and a level playing field that we know what we're talking about. I wanted to make sure I showed phone calls. So, for example, calls still come into the district, so there's an ability, whether it happens at a switchboard level or individually at departments, that when the phone rings, you can almost think of Let's Talk as the 21st century while you were out. What might normally get put on a Post-it note or transferred to voicemail or even converted into an email. We don't want to trade one inefficient way of doing things for another. When that call comes in, I can say, this call came in from Jesse. Here's his information. He's a parent. He has questions about Beltran Elementary School. It's a question, and I could submit this, and now it's off to the team of people at that elementary school to manage the response. But it's here, it's in the system, it's memorialized, it tracks against the time in which you're committing to responding and helping you sort of identify really what are the emerging trends and themes that are coming out of all of this feedback. I also wanted to show you, obviously, emails can come into the system. So Amity and I were exchanging emails earlier in the week, and just to show you, you can put emails into the system. So this was an email exchange that we had in the last few days, and I was able to push this email into Let's Talk as well. Over time, the goal is to have more and more of your customers engaging you through Let's Talk, as opposed to having that happen through email. But again, culture change, this is a good to great, continuous improvement activity, and really you crawl before you walk and you walk before you run. So we'll work with you on doing implementation with fidelity.
Wonderful.
Issue tracking. So let me show you the reports. I thought it would be best to show you real data rather than the synthetic data we've been populating in this fictitious account. This is, and I'm just going to reduce all of these here for a moment. This is a 45,000 student district in suburban Houston. It's called Alief ISD. And this is their dashboard. This is real-time data. This is an overview report that shows you how many dialogues are coming in, how many dialogues have been closed, so you can see they're doing fairly well. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, as a result of closing the loop with customers, the district gives the customer the ability to rate the district's responsiveness. So the question isn't, did I give you what you wanted? The question is, how responsive was I to your issue? So the two things you can control are how fast you respond. This district is responding in less than 2 days, and how well you respond. So it's not just about responding, but winning people over when you respond to them, and there's an entire training and professional development on providing customer service.
Ms. Dozier, you had a question?
Well, I did, but I can wait. I'm writing them down. I can go ahead now if you want, because you just mentioned something that, when you said that, we'll help you with the rolling out of this program, how did you go about rolling it out in the school districts where you're using it?
Sure.
And what was the reaction of the community when you rolled it out?
Sure. So can I run through the rest of this and we'll
Certainly.
come back to that?
Certainly.
Well, that's what we'll do.
Yeah,
That's
happy to
fine.
do that. I have probably 3 more slides and then we can
That's fine.
dive into that.
That's fine.
In the 2-day commitment, the district is responding to close the loop on these dialogues. 2 of these dialogues are past due. These are the embers that are burning out there that have the potential to create chaos if we don't deal with them proactively. But now I don't have to go very far to see who are the 2 people that have reached out, what have they reached out about, and who in the organization is responsible for owning and following up on these issues. You can see, and this may just be a formatting issue, I suspect, but you can see now which topics in the district are generating the most feedback. So Hastings High School, student enrollment, Elsick High School, HR, Taylor High School are the dominating topics that are driving most of the activity in this district. And you can begin to see which of the categories, which tagging categories are generating the most feedback. So student issues, communication and community relations, calendar, instruction, transportation, not a surprise, but it's important to have more than just the anecdotes on what those issues are. Two things in particular about this district's implementation that I love. One is in a district as diverse and large as theirs, they've virtually trained the community that when the community has feedback for the district to go to the district's website. And a full 98% of the feedback comes right from Alief ISD's website, not necessarily through phone calls, through emails. They haven't even turned on social media yet. So again, crawl, walk, run. What I also love about this district's implementation is 22% of the feedback comes from students. So it's amazing hearing what students have to say. They are your most important customer, and they're just delighted that they're able to reach out to their school and to the district, and that they're actually getting responses from them. You can see what types of dialogues are coming in. So 2/3 of the conversation are questions, 16% are concerns, 5% are suggestions, 8% are comments. Not that it's a lot, but 4% of 3,300 are compliments. When it comes to generating new content, I think this just gives you a wealth of information and direction you can go in terms of what stories you're going to tell and promote about the good that's going on in the system. Let me show you an insight report. And this report I can slice and dice in a variety of ways, so I can see where I am at with my dialogues month over month. And you can see this is not an overwhelming amount of activity. This is feedback essentially coming into the district already, but in various silos. If I wanted to see what types of dialogues or what types of customers are coming in month over month, I can do that. And I can begin to see, for example, I'm just going to skip over a few of these. I can see 2/3 of these conversations are being closed in less than a day. That's a wonderful key performance indicator on how responsive the district is. Their first time to reply is happening in less than 11 hours. Again, a very positive sign that the district is responsive. And I think the most powerful report for me in this example is the trending report, right? What happens when someone approaches someone in a position of leadership in the district and says, drop what you're doing, morale is an issue in the district. You know, typically somebody ran into a few teachers that weren't necessarily happy, and we thought, well, do we have a systemic issue? In this environment now, the superintendent can say, well, I don't necessarily disagree with you. We may have a morale issue, but from my view of things, it's 6% of the issue. If you really want to know what's trending in the district, it's a student issue, specifically transportation, student service, student activities, the dress code. And then this just, again, provides tremendous clarity on what's really going on in the district. And you are a large district. You'll have a fair bit of turnover and transition year over year. When you hire me to take over Elsick High School in July, what happens when I come in? People will make a beeline for me and want me to know, here's what's really going on in this school. I don't necessarily get the benefit of my predecessor's emails. 6% of the feedback that's come into the district last year was about this school I'm taking over. It would be great to know there's a place where I can see what are the perceived challenges and opportunities that are impacting this school, and it just begins to humanize me in a very, very meaningful way. Let me go ahead and just show you quickly a few more streams here, and then happy to take questions. News, so a lot like your Google alerts. We can bring all of this into one place. So anytime the district's name is mentioned, anytime the superintendent's name is mentioned, a building principal's name is mentioned, a building is mentioned, we can bring all of that feedback into Let's Talk automatically. And then in terms of how you discharge responsibilities and measure and monitor and track the workflow. So this feedback could have come in. This was an article that was written on April 19th. I'm just going to play Amity's role here for a moment. Actually, let me go back here. Amity could be looking at this article and say, I need to assign this to the office of the superintendent, and this has now become a dialogue. So I wouldn't necessarily be responding to an article, but normally I might find an article and then start emailing it. And so I've just now sent this article to the office of the superintendent, and you'll see when I click on all dialogues, here is that article. There are 3 people already assigned to this dialogue. I might write a response saying, team, we need to write an op-ed response to this. Please schedule a meeting to discuss. And again, all of that collaboration now can begin to happen in one location as opposed to having email threads going on around the district. So that's news. With Twitter, Any handle, any hashtag, or any phrase that excites you on social media, we can bring into Let's Talk automatically. And so you'll see here, we currently have anything that says @Lee Schools, anything that says Lee County Schools. If you have a hashtag that says hashtag Lee Learns, and that becomes a hashtag that you use, we can bring that into the system. They're sitting in Let's Talk, they're waiting for you to do something with it. You can do everything from delete it because it's just not relevant. You might assign it to a particular department. This is someone that said they love your boundary change proposal. You want to capture that, preserve it in the system. I don't know that we would ever encourage that you get into an ongoing dialogue on social media. 140 characters is never enough space to do that. If you're going to respond to social media, we would encourage one of two responses, and you'll see examples of that here. When they compliment you, thank them for the compliment. Pay all of the credit to your teaching and support staff. Let that be the narrative that people see when they come to your timeline. In more instances, you'll probably let people down. When we let people down, let's say, hey, sorry, we let you down. We're a leadership team that listens. We'd like to investigate this further for you. Will you click on this link and share more information with us? And when they click on the link, it brings them into Let's Talk, and it takes the entire conversation off of social media.
Wonderful.
And so Facebook would happen in a similar way. Instagram would happen in a similar way. And then I'll take a deep breath, pause, and check in to see how we're doing on time and questions. But this was the big highlights we wanted to show you. Obviously, we could spend at least another hour going through sort of how the system works, but happy to take the most pressing questions,
We
comments,
got
concerns.
plenty of time. I'm going to start with Ms. Dozier.
Well, again, if you could kind of share with us how the community from the different areas where you rolled this program out, how did the community react and how did you deal with it? And also, I see where if it comes into the central office, you can feed stuff out to the schools, but could the schools put this platform on their websites?
Sure. Yeah, so again, it's really a crawl, walk, run implementation.
Okay.
We typically encourage start with central office
Right.
and the core leadership team and what we consider to be those hot or trending topics, which you don't have to live in the community to find out pretty quickly what are the burning issues in the system. Typically within the first 30 to 45 days, we would like for central office and the core leadership team to be up and running. You could live in that first phase for the year before you start bringing it to schools. We found that phasing it into the system typically creates a pull strategy where principals around the second or third phase begin to come to central office asking for Let's Talk, because really they want to deal with these issues before they make it to central office.
Right.
But we want to avoid having people feel like this is being pushed on them.
To add to that, Ms. Dozier, because in the way that we redid the school websites to tie into the district website, we have the ability to push content to school websites. So let's say we're looking for parent input on the student dress code or code of conduct. We can take the Let's Talk button and push it to each of the school websites so that it looks like part of that school's website, but the data is going to come into the district dashboard. So in particular, immediately for special topics where we're really looking for parent input, we have the ability to do that right away.
You'll notice this is Fort Wayne, Indiana. If you were to go to any school site in Fort Wayne, you'll notice there's a Let's Talk button here. So again, part of this implementation includes bringing principals. If feedback comes into the district and it's really meant for a school, but that school isn't yet on Let's Talk. So for example, you can see this conversation came into Jesse about busing. When I hit this arrow, I can put in the school principal's email address and say, this feedback came into the district, but really it's meant for you. Would you please follow up and let us know what the resolution was on that issue?
Following up on Ms. Dozier's point, the LTMC, what size was that school? The one you showed us the real example? What size of district was that?
So we showed you Polk, which is a 100,000 student
Right, but
district.
you showed us the actual data of the.
Oh, right. So A-Leaf ISD is a 45,000 student
Okay.
district.
How long have they been up and running to get to where they are right?
So they're in year 3 now. So year 1 was really sort of a crawling period for them, and they're now well on their way to sort of what we would consider to be a gold standard implementation.
It's logical.
Ms. Dozier?
something else you said led to another question. We probably could sit here the rest of the day and talk about this. How does this work as far as when it comes into the central office? Do you have someone that's dedicated to just looking at Let's Talk, or how is it
Sure.
intercepted? Where does it go?
Thank you. So this is not intended to be more work for anyone. We have not had one client out of 250 implementations where anyone has had to hire someone full or part-time to manage this. This is really a matter of hours in the first phase of the implementation. We really believe customer service is everyone's responsibility, not just one individual or one department. So as you can see here with the topics, I'll just go to where it comes up a little bit better. These topics are routed to specific individuals in the district, so they don't all just come into Amity, and then Amity's got to figure out
Okay,
who do they
okay.
belong to. When it's a transportation issue, it goes to transportation.
Okay.
When it's a facilities issue, it goes to facilities. When it's nutrition, it goes to health services, right? So
Okay.
we'll map that out
Okay.
as part of the implementation, and then while you make a commitment to being responsive to those dialogues, when you look at the reporting, you'll always know what dialogues are considered to be past due and where is that happening. So you can see here, this is fictitious, this is not a real district. You can see 29 of these dialogues based upon a 3-day response time are now past due, but I now can see where in the organization I need to go to start being more proactive in terms of how we respond to these issues.
Okay.
Keep going.
Can I continue? All right, when I saw that there were 29 overdue notices on that last screen that you just showed us, if we have particular, and I don't want to single out any particular department, but if we have particular hotspots where there's a lot of feedback into the organization, and we are hearing that there's not a response back to the public, will that indicate this in that?
Yes.
So, okay.
So the way it's set up, you have individuals with specific permissions for their department. And so the administrator for the department, whomever that is assigned to, can see the issues that have been tracked to that department. And then you have district-wide administrators that can see the eagle's eye view and that 29 and who owns those 29 overdue responses.
Right, so role-based security, user rights and roles, depending upon who I am, determines what I can see and do when I'm in the system. So as a principal, I only see my building, and I'm only seeing my performance against the district's average. I'm not seeing anyone else's performance. This is, again, A-Leaf ISD, I'll point you to. This is every department and topic listed on their Let's Talk page. And you can see, I can sort this. Right now, it's listed alphabetically, but I can sort this by average days to close or average feedback score. So, for example, I want the average days report to be very short. These are departments, topics, and buildings that are closing their dialogues quickly. I'd like for this side of the report to be very long because they're getting good feedback scores. When it comes to leadership, we're not all good at every aspect of leadership. The goal is to lead with a carrot, not a stick. We're all in this together. How do we identify hot pockets and potential risks? We can't do that. We can't advocate for more resources and support if we don't have the data. So you can see as I scroll down on this report, maybe difficult to see, but you're seeing a district's average. Everyone above the blue line is faster than the district's average. Everyone below the blue line is slower than the district's average. But now I have tremendous clarity and direction in terms of, can I pair people up above the blue line with people below the blue line to say, what are you doing to get to be really efficient with this? Maybe we're slower to respond because we're being inundated with feedback and we need more support and more resources. This begins to give you that clarity.
Ms. Morgan?
I have none at this time.
Okay, I thought you were still calling on the data feedback.
No, Mrs. Dozier asked my question.
Anybody else?
This is just what I've been wanting. Except I was thinking of, can it be on a piece of paper and we check off when it's done? This is much better than what I was trying to envision.
Well, thank you.
So I appreciate your creating something like this.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes, so I'm going to ask the big question. How much does this cost per year?
Sure.
And is there ongoing professional development when we have new people come up on board?
Yeah, I can speak to the pricing a little bit. So we're still negotiating final pricing, but solutions like this typically run $1.50 to $2 per student per year. So it's based on the size of the district.
Okay.
And if I'm correct, then ongoing professional development and support is included in that.
Okay.
And I can speak to that if you'd like. So we showed you a lot of systems today.
Right.
There's three aspects of the delivery. There's the system, the process, and the professional development. I think maybe the most important aspect of the delivery of this is the professional development. The professional development isn't just the technical training and support on how to use Let's Talk. It's making sure that of the 800 plus people that are going to use Let's Talk over the next year to 3 years are all getting customer service training, support, and best practices so that it becomes really part of a reflex that when a customer engages you in a conversation, you're building and winning them over with being highly responsive. And there's a book we see in a lot of leadership teams' offices called Crucial Conversations, and the entire professional development and training is built around crucial conversations.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Dr. Atkins?
Oh, no, I don't have any comments other to say that, we are looking forward to implementing I think a more efficient platform,
Yes.
so.
I think the beauty of this is, as they've demonstrated, is the ability to not only see what our community is asking, but who's asking the questions, the response time, and the ability to get the data quickly and usefully to all concerned. I think that's really, really important. I do believe that we're only touching a very, very small part of our community as far as getting information to them, but also opening up to get that information. And for no other reason, but there's just no vehicle like this that's
If I could just add to that, Mr. Toiba, you're absolutely right. It provides a safe space for parents to provide input without being afraid to post it on social media where they might get ganged up on, or they just don't want their opinion broadcast in a public way. This is a safe space for the public. It's also the safe space for staff, because as you heard Jesse say, if we really want good input or real input from staff, we're going to provide a place where they can do it where they feel like they've done it in a safe way and they're not going to get picked on for their opinion.
And that's another question that I have too. Mr. Furquay, is one of the biggest concerns, and well, it's not a big concern, but one of the things I've heard is that even in our blind or anonymous input from our employees is because they're afraid that they'll know about the site address and the IP address and all that. Can you give me the assurances that when somebody writes into our system and they don't want to identify themselves other than it's an employee, that they can do so?
So when I go to, thank you, it's a great question. So when I go to Let's Talk and I choose a topic, if I don't fill out how do we want to contact you, it comes in as an anonymous dialogue.
And then
In one of the first implementations we did in Fort Bend, a 75,000 student district, I think in their first year they had more than 50% of their dialogues were anonymous dialogues, to in their second year less than 10%.
Sure.
Mainly because people felt like it was a trust issue. I mean, anonymity is never about what they're saying. It's why people feel they need to hide behind it. And when you start doing this in a systematic way, you will start chipping away at a lot of that, at a lot of those concerns.
So we need, yes, Pam.
So then, tagging on with that, we would be able to create a section for staff to take care of that in a way that they would feel safe, and it would go directly to the person they would like it to go to.
Correct.
And then it would be up to us to decide how we want to monitor what happens to it from there.
Yeah, when somebody submits an anonymous dialogue, there's a notification that they get before they submit their dialogue that if they're submitting the dialogue anonymously, you can't directly respond to them. But I can assure you, people that are submitting anonymous feedback are listening. And so if you start to see a trend, whether people are putting their name to something or not, you have some resources here that can see what that information is looking like, what are the trends and themes that are coming out of that feedback, and use it to do press releases, Typically it's a more robust communication as opposed to we need to do a wholesale change to a particular part of the operation. So it may be a weekly email that you're doing to staff that says, over the last week, 2/3 of the feedback we've received from our staff are about this issue. Let us take a moment to address some of what we've heard. And that will demonstrate to people that you have been listening.
Okay, and then another question with regard to that, and the only reason why I'm spending time on this is I see this as a very positive tool that will help address that for our staff members. They would be able to not just address it, would they have the capability to select more than one place that comment would go, so that more than one person would receive?
Well, keep in mind that the back end of the system decides where the comment goes. So depending on the dialogue and the narrative in the individual's comment, the system decides who that gets routed to. Remember, there'll always be district administrators that can see all conversations, and then it gets routed to the most relevant department to be addressed. So the consumer doesn't have to decide who it goes to. We have a large system. Sometimes, you get calls to the board office when people want to talk about student assignment when they meant to get the student assignment office. The system is a smart system and decides where it needs to go so that the customer gets the most immediate response or help.
And you can always bring other folks into that conversation if you see
So that we would
it's
be
fit.
able to see those comments.
Correct.
Ms. Fisher?
This Let's Talk program looks like it could be phenomenal for us. But I do have a question. Are there other programs like Let's Talk, and have we talked to any of them?
We've seen some other platforms out there, not as robust, because this platform does a few things. One, there are platforms that do automatic workflow. So
Right.
an issue comes in, we route it to the right place. There are platforms out there that do that. I think where Let's Talk stands out in a couple of areas. One of those is the ability to visualize the data very easily. As you know, we don't want to be looking at spreadsheets necessarily to get a high-level view. So the data visualization is very good. I think another area that is exceptional is the ability to integrate social media monitoring along with the feedback, and I think that's actually part of the magic sauce here, is that that we can look at trends that are going on outside of the system as well as inside the system, and sort of break that down in a way that we can not only see what the trends are in both avenues, but also see how they differ between what's being said on social media and what's being said as we get feedback from the customers that we're talking to directly. And so I think that those things are pieces. I've seen services where you can get the workflow. I've seen services where you can get some social media monitoring and trending. I have not seen services like this where we can combine that all into one and allow a little bit more proactive approach to some of the communication by seeing what's going on in multiple venues.
Thank you. I'm really impressed with it.
And one of the things I just wanted to mention that I will tell you that we have struggled with, as we have tried to implement really a system using our existing technology to do something similar to what this platform is already taking care of. And I can tell you that manually it becomes very, very difficult to stay on top of, to track, to analyze the data. When we were working on that Greenbelt project, Mark can tell you this, getting actionable data out of the data that we were collecting to where we could make good quality decisions about how to best serve our customer became very, very difficult. And then in order to try to improve our service, we were going to have to collect more data that would require more work, and then it started to be a question about return on investment to actually, do we actually want to do that? And then ultimately, we decided that it wasn't worth the time and effort that we were going to have to make decisions based on the data that we have. So it's difficult to keep up with currently, and I think that what's helpful here is that beyond just workflow, I think it helps to integrate all of these things together into one place, and then it collects and reports out on the data as we're moving along. So all of that is happening without a lot of manual input into the system, which is really what we need right now.
Just one final comment that Jesse didn't mention is that there is a mobile platform, so that district leaders and board members in the community that get approached by a constituent that says that this, they contacted us 10 days ago, or they haven't heard anything back, you can actually do a smart search in the mobile app and determine exactly where that issue is and who it's with and whether or not it's been responded to.
I'm just appreciative for the number of translations you have available. When I consider how many languages we service here in our district, although we need more than 100 to adequately take care of them all. But this goes a long way in helping all of our staff members develop better communication skills.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bonnie?
Okay.
Is Dr. Pruitt and Bonnie McFarland come forward. This is kind of all the other types of insurance, property and the famous boiler and machinery, cyber, fuel tank liability, all those things. So, Dr. Pruitt.
Good afternoon, Dr. Atkins, board members. We are very excited to follow that Let's Talk conversation with some riveting information this afternoon. And what really we're going to mostly focus on is the district insurance and the things that fall under that category. The John Z. Stern and the TSACG, those are just the annual expenditures that are a result of the contracts that are already in place. So there's nothing there in terms of anything new or different, but it does come before you as part of this package. So now I'm going to turn it over to the expert, Bonnie McFarland, and she's going to review it with you.
And I am going to
And Bonnie.
touch directly. Thank you. So it kind of lives in the background for the most part. And we are also self-insured for a lot of our insurances. So folks deal directly with us, and then we as the district deal with our reinsurers. So this is really an insurance that really happens in large part behind the scenes. The district, as I mentioned, is self-insured for the first layer of coverage, and we purchase what's called reinsurance, which is protection for the district against catastrophic loss in the different areas that we purchase these insurance for. We do work with a broker who markets this insurance for us and also works with us throughout the year if any issues arise in any of these insurances, and that's Brown & Brown PREA, and they were hired through an RFP process. And the policies that we're here to talk about today would become effective on July 1st with the new fiscal year. As Dr. Atkins mentioned, I do apologize for this slide. I was going to break it up, but this is all of the insurances that we buy. We buy property insurance. Okay. I know that it's just very small, so I do apologize for that. The boiler and machinery is this, I call that the stuff. So your property insurance protects your buildings, and your boiler and machinery protects the stuff that's in the building. So your computers, your desks, all that good stuff. At the direct suggestion of the Florida Department of Insurance, last year we added a standalone terrorism policy. We have several liability policies, general auto employee benefits. We purchase reinsurance for workers' compensation, school leaders and professional employment practices. We purchase a student, we have offered voluntary student accident, and we're going to be talking a lot more about a possible blanket student accident policy here in a minute. We offer the catastrophic student accident policy. That's a requirement of the FHSAA in order to have sporting programs within our schools. We have a crime policy, an ocean marine policy, a fuel tank policy for all of our bus compounds where we do store fuel. We also have policies through the National Flood Insurance Program, also known as NFIP, that is a requirement for structures that are within special flood hazard zones. And we have cyber and privacy liability insurance. This protects all of the data that we have. As you know, we have a lot of student data as well as a lot of employee data, and those data are a source of interest of people who want to do bad things. So this provides us with the insurance that would pay for all of the communications, the monitoring in the event that our data was compromised. So on a couple of those different areas, we've actually seen rate decreases. So the property insurance, the terrorism insurance, and the school leaders and employment practices, the rates for those insurances actually have gone down. We did see rate increases in the general auto and employee benefits, or the liability package, the fuel tank package, and the National Flood Insurance Program. The National Flood Insurance Program, unfortunately, is something we buy from the federal government. So the price is what the price is, and we have to buy it. And that is the place where we saw the largest increase. When I say we have to, there's always a choice. But if we don't purchase this, then we are not eligible for FEMA disaster money in the event that we have a FEMA. So while technically we would have a choice not to buy it, the stakes are pretty high if we don't. And that is an area where we saw the largest increase due to funding issues within that program with the federal government. We had some rate change, or some where the rates were flat, but we saw a change to the price for other reasons. For example, with the workers' compensation, the catastrophic student accident, and the crime policy, we had what's called an increase to exposure, which were additional student counts or increase to payroll. So while the rates for that particular plan are the same, because we had an increase in what that rate is applied to, we did see an increase in those as well. And then this is where I want to spend the majority of our time. There's two things that we would like to propose that are new to our program for this year. We would like, several years ago, we were in a very, what they call a hard market with our insurances relative to property. And it was very difficult to purchase property insurance, and when you did purchase it, it was expensive. And during that time, for budgetary purposes, we decided to reduce the coverage that we had in some areas. And wind and hail is one of those coverages that we reduced in order to keep it budget tolerable. With the reduction in the property insurance, we would like to propose that we purchase a little bit more of that for this upcoming year. So the request is to increase the wind and hail coverage by $5 million. And that is a cost that's within the reduction that we got on the property overall. So it's actually, even though we're going up a little bit on the coverage, we're staying under the reduction, if that makes sense. Because I told you the rate went down. Mm-hmm. So when we buy a little bit more, we're still under the rate for last year for property. And the other thing we'd like to talk about today is purchasing a blanket student accident policy. And what the student accident policy has been to date is a voluntary student accident policy. So we do a lot of marketing at the beginning of the year. We put things on our websites. We try to get students to purchase this. It's very inexpensive coverage, but it's on a voluntary basis. So we hear a lot of things like, I didn't know we could buy that, or well, we had insurance at the beginning of the year when that policy was being marketed, but then we lost a job in December and we forgot that we could go back and, we could apply for that type of insurance. The insurance is provided through School Insurance of Florida, and I do have with me here today Lane Smith, who's with that, if we have questions beyond what I can handle in answering, but I think I can handle most of it. This blanket student accident policy would cover all students during the school day for school-sanctioned activities. So if they're at school in one of our buildings, or if they are on a field trip through school, those would all be considered school-sanctioned activities. And it would also provide blanket coverage for all of our FHSAA. For those of you who've worked in schools, you're probably familiar with, especially middle and high schools, when your students are going to go play sports, they have to fill out that form where they declare all their insurance information. And we have the same challenge with those forms that we have with people knowing about the student accident. Maybe they had insurance when they filled out the form and they filled it out with Fidelity, but something happened and they lost coverage, and then that student may no longer be covered. And we don't know that until an injury occurs to find out that they're no longer covered. So this particular program is about, it's $219,340 to offer both the student accident during the day, so it would cover their school day. If it happened on the weekend, that would be separate. This would be for the time that they're in school. And it would also cover the athletic for the middle and high schools, for the athletic requirement to carry accident insurance. So I want to just pause there because I gave you a whole lot of information about the accident policy, and I want to see if there's any questions.
Question. Ms. LaRiviere.
What is the cost for the student policy? What will that cost the district?
For the blanket
The
student
blanket,
accident, just a little over, it's $219,340 for the year. So let's call it $220,000 for the entire year to cover
All of our students?
to cover all of our students and to provide coverage for the FHSAA sanctioned athletic activities.
So do we get to cancel CSA?
No, the catastrophic student accident is a layer that lays on top of the voluntary student accident. So the voluntary student accident would cover the first $25,000, and the catastrophic student accident would cover from the $25,000 to the $1 million that we're required to carry for FHSAA.
So again, this additional insurance, why the need that we have it if, I still don't get the need, other than convenience of having them fill the forms.
Okay, well, I'll spend a little more time on that, I apologize. It provides a couple of things. We have a lot of kids who play during PE, during recess, and one of the things we say in our department is sometimes kids fall down and go boom. We have kids who get injured while they're in our facility, either as participating in school activities such as PE and or recess. So this would provide accident coverage for any accidents that occurred in those types of scenarios. So while the kids are at school participating in PE or participating in recess or other activities where they may sustain an injury. Would also provide us blanket coverage for our athletes, which is really a bigger exposure because athletes are more likely to get hurt than just an average student who's participating in school-based activities during the day. So it would provide accident coverage for all of our students and all of our athletes from K3 through K12, or I'm sorry, K3 through 12th grade. And we felt like it was economical. We vetted this out through the cabinet. Many of those folks have been principals in schools where they've worked with parents who've had injuries who may or may not have insurance. The biggest challenge is when they don't have insurance, that the student can receive medical care through this policy for the accident. And then it also provides a layer of protection even for students who may be insured. So if you have insurance, you still may have a deductible of $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000. And this would provide, it's an accident policy, so it just pays a flat dollar for each type of thing that occurs. So it's not major medical like we talk about with our major medical plan. But it would help parents meet those obligations within the deductible, even if they had insurance through a group major medical plan.
I guess I get it. So because we have student accident insurance, our liability. This is paying for, so we're actually paying if they get hurt for, so that the district has insurance to pay for the child's injuries that if they had insurance would be paid for, but for their deductible, or the ones that don't, it would pay for those insurance. Okay. You guys get that?
So,
Yeah, I remember those every year, passing out those insurance forms and trying to get those back, especially for middle schoolers. And it's hard to get, a lot of times those get thrown in the trash.
I'm just, go ahead, Ms. Fisher.
I was just wondering if there was some kind of information, some data about the number of accidents that we've had recently, or, you know, what prompted this suggestion to have this blanket coverage?
I don't have specific data to share with you today, but we did review several things. We reviewed the number of incident reports that we have through our clinics.
Right.
We reviewed claims that parents make against the school district when their student is injured on our property. And we also, because not every accident turns into a claim, so we looked at both of those to see how many accidents do we have that are occurring, and what type of claim liability do we have when a claim is filed, either through participation in the regular school day or participation in sports. And we do have, in a given year, a number of parents who reach out to us because their children don't have insurance, and are looking for something from the school district to help them cover some of these basic expenses. And we felt like that for this dollar amount to cover all of our students and all of our FHSAA obligations with having the students having the insurance, that it was protection for the district against those types of claims.
Ms. Riviere, and Ms. Dozier after me.
And I'm imagining that by having this will also help with keeping our liability insurance at a lower level. Yes, because this part would be used first prior to going to the other.
Correct.
Depending on the type of accident and exactly what happens.
Ms. Dozier.
All right, let's say that a student is wearing a pair of glasses and they fall on the playground and their glasses get broken and they bust an eye and they're going to have stitches. So what this policy would do is it would, if the parents have hospital insurance, it would kick in for any deductibles or anything like that, okay? And it would pay for whatever, and then their insurance, if they had insurance, would be used as well. If there was no insurance, this would pay up to a certain amount, because that's a specific injury. And I heard you say the reason is because of all the out-of-pocket we are because of the different people that file stuff against the district. What is to stop the parent from still doing that?
Well, as I tell principals whenever I talk to them about district liability, anybody can sue us for anything at any time.
Right.
So in terms of people, coming to the district, it won't stop people coming from the district to the district. What it will provide is it will provide us a place to direct them, because generally what they're looking for is they're looking for financial assistance with the injury.
Right.
So the example that you gave where a child falls and has an injury, there's a specific dollar amount that gets paid out if they're seen in the emergency room. There's a specific dollar amount that gets paid out if they have to have x-rays. There's a specific dollar amount that pays out if they have to have surgery. And so those are the types of places where the person would get assistance, even if that accident was no fault of the district, that person would still get the assistance of this program by having it on a blanket basis.
Okay, and I'm asking, I use that example as a reason, because
Okay.
I know at the elementary level, we have kids that break their glasses all the time. Now, does this insurance cover the purchase of new glasses?
Can you come up?
Can you come up, Lane?
In the event, of course, in the event that it would be an accident that occurred at the school, or,
Lane, is that the appliances?
There's a specific,
Let him get up
this
here.
is just a summary. This is just a summary that is provided here. But the way that glasses work or hearing aids, typically if it's a covered accident and they have to get medical treatment, then there's a benefit for those items.
okay.
But it won't just provide coverage for I broke my glasses the other day and there was no accident described. Because otherwise, you're going to be paying for everybody's glasses throughout the school.
But if they, because sometimes we would have kids that would fall off of a monkey bar, fall off the slide, and they would break their glasses, but they necessarily didn't have to go in for any medical treatment.
They would now.
But then the parents wanted us to pay for the glasses because it happened on school property. So what you're saying is, if they don't go to the hospital, or if they don't go to the emergency room or to have some medical treatment, it would not pay for that.
Typically, it would not. Okay, but I mean, we specialize in this type of business, so I mean, we could put in the benefit any way that the district would like it
Okay.
to phrase. I would side with not putting it in there unless they do have medical treatment, because you don't know when those glasses were actually broke. They could have been broken a week ago at home or something like that. But if they wanted to structure a benefit specifically for broken glasses, we could do that in the policy. Generally, it's just for when there is an accidental injury that requires medical treatment.
I want to clarify, because I think there's some confusion, and I want to make sure the board members understand the nuance. The insurances that we have, the types of insurance, our property insurance, our boiler insurance, our standalone terrorism insurance, all those insurances are taxpayer-paid money to protect the interests of the district. This insurance is for insurance that we will have to protect, that our responsibility, it's not whether when a child gets hurt, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not about the children that when they have a liability and they sue the district and we're liable that our insurance would kick in. This is for insurance that they would be responsible for their child, that they either have insurance and it pays for their deductible, or they don't have insurance, but they have some resource upon which to draw from that we're doing. That becomes, we're more of a welfare state, that it's not our discretion. I don't believe, and my position is I'm adamantly against this type of thing. As much as I would love to do it, we don't have the money. We're trying to find money to put money into classrooms where our responsibility lies, and we're supposed to put in money where our fiscal necessities are with our capital expenditures and our academics. We don't have the money to be able to take on another burden. That's not ours responsibility legally or fiduciary to be able to take care of these kids. That's the parents' responsibility. And it's nice to be able to do that, but we just don't have the money. And for us to go to taxpayers and say, look, we're going to pay some more money, so if somebody gets hurt on during our watch, we're not only going to do the best that we have to legally and economically, but we're going to go beyond that. We're actually going to pay for their medical bills. Oh, no, you are. Well, I can tell a lot of taxpayers that are going to say, that's not, that's a lot of money to be paying of my money for kids that aren't my kids. And so I'm not going to support that, because it's not a liability that, the FHSA required as far as the catastrophics is because that's state statute and required by statute. So we do have that in some aspects, that we have to do those type of coverages that again are us reaching out, but that's because we're required to under law. To do that under our own auspice, I think, is not, I don't believe is something that I can do and feel fiscally responsible to my taxpayers. Ms. Fisher.
Thank you. Well, conversely, I think that the children are our responsibility, and we have a district where 70% of our kids are on free or reduced lunch, which would maybe account for why their parents can't afford the insurance. I went ahead a little bit here and looked at the final slide, which maybe I shouldn't have done, but I see that with your effort to add us protection from liability, if I understood you correctly, that's part of the rationale for this, and to protect our children so that if they do get hurt and their parents don't have insurance, they're taken care of, so then they can be ready to learn. So I see that we're going to be a 3.47 increase over the expiring premiums, and still 7.49 under budgeted funds. So because I believe that our children in our schools are our primary responsibility, I would support it.
Well, and I also just want to say that part of it is, it wasn't just about what you were saying, Ms. Fisher, but it also was, Mr. Toiber, to mitigate some of our other exposure and other expenses for families that, for example, when they were in sports and the insurance lapsed, or that it does protect the district. So I don't see it as a one-sided, it's just for the benefit of the students. I see it as it's a benefit for both sides.
And so what's the other, our side again? I didn't understand. Go ahead.
I can take that if you want. One of the areas that this would protect the district from a liability standpoint is in collecting all of those data forms from students when they participate in athletics. We're responsible for collecting that form and verifying that the student has the insurance that they have provided on there. And so that is one area of liability protection where we would receive that protection, because if somebody were to falsify a form and we were unaware, or if someone were, as the example I gave earlier, they had insurance in August when they filled out the form, and then they had a job loss where they lost the insurance and they didn't come back and tell us, that now we have a child playing sports that does not have the underlying insurance policy that we did the due diligence to find out that they had when they started that sport. But they may have lost that coverage during the time frame. So the protection to the district is in those areas of the administration of that. We have thousands of student athletes, so we're collecting thousands of those documents and those forms, and they all have to be processed appropriately. In addition, we had a sports injury case out of this district that went all the way to the Florida Supreme Court. They had a very interesting finding, ruling out of that case. And I may mix the parents up. If I do, I apologize. The mother had signed the form, and the Supreme Court ruled that because the mother had signed that form, she could no longer proceed with her claim against the district. But the father, even though they were married, the father had not signed the form and he could proceed. So we're finding some things in the law that are not helpful to us as a district in us trying to administer our duties in verifying that these students are insured. And so there is a level of protection for the district as well.
Mr. Martin, on those different scenarios, and again, I'm going to cite the three that she talked about. I'd like you to address them individually. The first one is that they turned in a form and they falsified the document, our liability as a district. Number two is they filled out the document. Do we have a duty that we have to continue to maintain if it lapsed? And the third one is the fact that the father sued us, doesn't our other insurance liability, this liability, even though it would possibly have, avert a claim, we still have insurance that is protecting. That's why we have our student athletic insurance to protect against that claim.
My understanding is the catastrophic insurance that we have has a self-insured retention, which is is it the $25,000?
$25,000, yes, sir.
So this insurance would provide coverage below that.
Correct.
And I don't deal with this on a daily basis, but I believe that in many claims that we receive may be resolved for less than $25,000. So this form of insurance would cover that. So that provides some level of protection to the school district. Additionally, I would assume that in this situation where you have that insurance that does pay the medical costs, that those parents then would not come to the school district to file a claim, that it would remove a number of claims in that context.
So the claims the ones that are below $25,000, do we have the data on how many that's been done over the last year?
I can get that for you, yes, sir. The challenge is that every call that comes to us doesn't then become a claim. So I have claims data, but that isn't going to accurately represent everybody who comes to us, because quite often, when they filled out these forms, they've waived their claim, and that's the first thing we tell them. Now, that doesn't stop them from going and getting a lawyer and then coming and suing us, which was to the question earlier, can we prevent people from suing us? No. And then at that point, it would become a claim. So I don't have records on the inquiries. I actually was very excited by our prior presenter, because I think that would be very helpful in a number of areas in my area. So I can provide you with the claims data, but I want to caveat that by saying that's not going to be the complete picture, because there are people who come to the school and people who come to my department that never gets as far as becoming a claim, that are not going to be captured in that data.
Ms. LaRiviere.
And forgive me, give me the cost again. The cost is 2,000,
219,000.
220,000.
220,000.
It actually breaks down to 62 cents per student for the regular school day, non-athletics. And then it's roughly 10,280 per high school for just the athletics.
Right.
So your football team and all sports are in the higher, are the ones that are at most risk.
I see the logic of it. I see the benefit of it. I think sometimes when those phone calls are made, and if they don't have insurance, I would wager to bet that many of those times the medical expenses are taken care of somewhere within the school with people who have made donations or other things like that to help with such cases. And those things we can't document. We won't know. But at least this way, it does protect our individual schools. It has something in place that we can guarantee is there. Now, is there a form that they need to fill out that we will need, or just their information that we have on school registration would be all they need?
Would work with School Insurance of Florida on a student head count. And
Okay.
then when a claim is filed, they would verify that that student was our student.
All right, so there's nothing that the parent has to do on that end. So then it's totally taken care of for our athletes that have to have that insurance for up to $25,000, so we don't have to worry about that. And I get that from middle school and high school.
Right, this would automatically satisfy the FHSAA. Their mandate states that before a student participates, that the school or the school principal must verify that they have primary coverage or some type of coverage before they
Not
participate.
just the catastrophic.
And that's not
okay.
just at the beginning of the year, that's really daily. They
Right.
should be checking that, according to the mandate.
Ms. Morgan?
Well, I have to agree with Mr. Toiber. I'm concerned about passing on something where we haven't seen a solid economic argument made and sort of a plan laid out. I understand why you want to do it, but I'm not certain that the case, a good case has been made.
Going to the wind and hail, the $5 million increase, you said the rate went down and then this part went up. How much did the rate go down, excluding the incremental increase just in the wind? And then how much is the incremental $5 million costing us?
The rate went down $262,400, and the additional expense is $100,000.
And how much wind do we currently have?
$75 million.
And what's the basis to increase it by another 8%?
We have $100 million all perils, and we look at what it would cost to replace a school in the event of a catastrophic loss. And that is a line of coverage, as I mentioned earlier, that we had reduced. This would begin moving us back to matching our all other perils. So regardless of why a structure was destroyed, we would have those limits to go to replace that structure, or multiple structures if it's multiple structures.
Ms. Morgan?
So I guess my question is, did we get this information beforehand? Or are we just, I guess from a presentation point of view, I'm concerned with the amount of data that's been brought to us to make any kind of a judgment. I don't know if I'm being
I
clear,
do
but-
apologize. I had submitted a spreadsheet that it appears maybe you don't have, that outlines basically all of this. So I do apologize. I was feeling we were a little disconnected, and maybe that's it. That outlines all of our limits, what the policies are.
Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive, the backup material to go with the PowerPoint.
But
We don't have it.
but that helps us.
We submitted it. I'm not sure why you didn't get it.
Okay.
I can certainly make sure that that's forwarded through.
The presentation was included in our connection for the agenda, but nothing that was on a
Supporting
spreadsheet.
documents.
Did it look
And
like
I don't think
this?
it was attached to the email.
Well, I apologize. You submitted it to,
My
so
understanding
what,
is.
let me do
it
this
was-
then.
Okay.
Because as I understand it, what gets submitted should be what's in their packet. So I do not understand why they don't have it in their packet. So, what I would like to do at this point, if it pleases the board, is, we do have our individual meetings. That would be an opportunity to go over this particular spreadsheet with you all, and also give you an opportunity to ask some of the more pointed questions, and you could have some of this you've had this briefing, you have that information in advance, and that way you can prepare your questions, and then I do believe we would have the opportunity to bring this back if we needed to, or at least before you had to act upon it. We would be able to do that. In addition to that, Mr. Troiber, we could provide that information that you had requested. So, if that works for you all, we'll do that.
Anything else, board members, that we need with that?
No, but I do like the idea of coming back to us with all the information so that we can research it, read it through, and get some understanding, and also come up with more logical questions that will help enlighten us more.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience with me. I apologize, and we will get back with the requested information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a lot of information, and, I do appreciate your all's presentation, and they do a thorough job, but we want to make sure you all have the information you need prior to making a decision.
And I've forgotten your name, but thank you for being here to answer any questions that might come up. I appreciate it.
Certainly, thank you.
For the record, can you tell, who are you, can you give us your name again?
Lane Smith?
Lane Smith.
Smith.
Thank you.
How could somebody forget the last name of Smith?
Dr. Morris. Mr. Tubb. Mr. Scott. Dr. Desmores. All yours.
You ready? Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Adkins. I'm here to introduce to you Mr. Glenn Scott with Davidson Fixed Income Investments, who is our investment advisor. He's going to update you on the performance of our investments over the last quarter and give you an update of where we are.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Board, for the time to come before you and just in the sunshine here and open, show you what we're doing with your investment dollars. The school district, by its very nature, divides its portfolio into two components. The first portfolio is a short-term portfolio, heavily invested in overnight cash instruments that reflect the nature of property tax collection and expenditures of a school district. So a school district, somewhat uniquely amongst public entities in investing its public funds, has a huge component of cash that it burns through an annual cycle. And then the second component of your portfolio represents a long-term reserve. And if we want to go through the two graphics here, the portfolio is divided up in a way that it looks at the characteristics of each of those portfolios. So the first portfolio, and the big one here in blue, is the cash component of the portfolio. So you're looking at, right now, a portfolio comprising just under $400 million. The book value yield on the portfolio is 54 basis points. To put that in perspective, the overnight Fed funds rate is set between 25 and 50 basis points, so you're earning slightly more than the Fed funds rate. We hope that the Federal Reserve might this year give us one more hike, and if they do, the rate that you achieve on your overnight cash balances would increase rather quickly to match that increase. So we did see a big movement up in the rates that you were achieving on your cash balances after the December 2015 hike that took interest rates up 25 basis points. Other characteristics of the overnight portfolio is that it's earning right now on a monthly basis about $173,000. And again, this cash balance of a little under $400 million will deplete, and it depletes down to a point later in the year where you get into the consideration of whether you want to do any tax anticipation note financing to close the gap until the next property tax cycle kicks in towards the end of the calendar year. The second page describes the term portfolio, the long-term reserves. And this is where I get more involved with working with your staff as your fiduciary to help you invest these funds in an efficient manner. So what we do under state law is we have an investment policy that is prescribed by the various elements of state statutes, and we invest in a manner of very liquid, high credit quality securities. It's a mix of securities, and those securities are laddered out over time to match anticipated potential uses of those funds. So we're always generating liquidity from just an ongoing rolling of maturities. So the characteristics on this portion of the portfolio, a little over $100 million. Book value yield presently is just about 1.22%. And on an annual basis, or excuse me, on a monthly basis, this portion of your portfolio is earning about $112,000 per month. If you look in the pie chart, it describes the different instruments that your portfolio is comprised of, and obviously the biggest component of that is what are called agency securities. And when we say that, we're talking about U.S. federal government agencies like Home Loan Bank and Federal Farm Credit Bank. And then in the darker green is U.S. Treasury note securities. So the combination of the two represents instruments of the U.S. government. Then you have another allocation towards corporate notes, and we invest in very high credit quality corporate securities, for example, Microsoft. And then there's a small exposure to municipal securities. There's no Puerto Rico exposure, so if you're reading about that, no worries. We'd never put you in something like that. These are generally very highly rated, either state debt issuances or large, highly rated, liquid, taxable municipal, and sometimes tax exempt, but right now taxable municipal debt instruments. And then there's a little bit of an allocation that is the cash sweep coming out of this portfolio that goes into the Fidelity Prime Money Market Fund. What that represents is as securities mature, we park it into that money market fund until we see an opportunity to invest in a new security further out in the curve. Bill?
I'd like to remind you that if you look at those two things, the first graph that you saw for the cash management showed $173,000 a month. The second one, which is our long term, showed $112,000 per month. I'd remind you that the cash has 4 times the amount of money in it that the investments do. So if you annualize those two out, the excess, the earnings for if you took the cash value, the cash position, and pull that down to the $100 million that we have in the long term, instead of the $173 million, it would be $43 million. So you can compare the performance of the two. And if you take our long-term investment portfolio, which Glenn has helped us with, and you annualize that out, you come to about $1.3 million, and in 12 months. And I would remind you, as we always do when we come, that $1.3 million funded 27 teachers in our classrooms over the last year that we would not have had funds to pay for if we hadn't moved to a more aggressive, even though it's still conservative investment policy. And I would also remind you that our investment policy 6.07 states that return of investment is more important than return on investment, and we keep that in mind, so we are very conservative. Any questions?
All right. Thank you.
For all you do.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Desmore? Good stuff.
Is it possible to take a 5-minute recess? I don't want to miss what she said.
All right, am I on? All right. Thank you. All right, we wanted to discuss with you today, give you the briefing on the capital plan for 2017. So we wanted to hit some highlights for you as far as what's happened in the past, what we're looking at 2017, and then talk about a little bit more long-term because, of course, the capital plan is always in the 5-year window. So just to recap a little bit, and please believe me, I don't mean to bore you. I know you all have heard this several times before, but in terms of edification for the public, just to recap some of the numbers. Over the past several years, when you're looking at our capital fund situation between 2008 and 2013, during that crash, during that period, we had a tax roll loss of over $400 million. So that was over 40% decrease in the value of our tax roll. And again, that meant the loss of about $400 million of funding within that time period. We had an 80% reduction in impact fees. So think of at one point where our impact fees per year were as high as $57 million, but kind of in the $30 million range per year, down to about $2.8 million that we collected in impact fees last year. And then, of course, our state capital dollars, which at one point we had received between $8 and $21 million a year, pretty much eliminated down to nothing. This current year, we did receive about $1.5 million in state capital funding. Unsure of whether that will continue in the future for the next for the next several years or not. So that total impact, when you look at that 5-year window of what that reduction is or what that reduction was within our capital funds, about $656 million worth. And so when you want to look at that visually, this is a picture of several of our different sources of funding. So you look at property taxes. The blue line represents what we were receiving in 2007. The green line represents what we received that year in 2014. So you see the huge reduction visually in property taxes, in impact fees, in PICO, which is the state dollars, and through Classrooms for Kids revenue, which was also state dollars that at the time they were providing for us to meet the class size mandate. And of course, those have been eliminated. Then this is another visual just to show what has happened to our funding, but looking at the local funding versus state funding. So in 2008, of course, the green bar is the local part of our funding, and then the blue bar is the state part of our funding. So in 2008, receiving about $270 million or so worth of funding, capital funding, most of that coming from the local source. Then you see in 2015, of course, how the total line has been significantly reduced, and then that part that is attributable to the state being almost nothing, and almost all of it coming from our local level. So just a couple of visuals to understand where we are as far as our capital funds are concerned and what has happened over the past several years. So when you look at then a comparison of our projections, this is pretty light on the screen, but just to show you that bottom line here, this bottom line is our projected revenue over the next several years. So this bottom line shows where our projected revenue will be. The green line or the top line shows where our revenue, where we would like for our revenue to be to meet certain objectives that we'll talk about shortly. And so that gap there is about $45 million a year, and that gap includes things like technology, like maintenance of our existing buildings, renovation of our existing buildings, and of course the addition of new schools. So based on that, the challenge that we have is that our current capital plan is balanced within the 5-year window, and we'll go through that in some pretty good detail in just a second. So it is balanced within the 5-year window, and it's balanced based on what we can afford. We have an amount of revenue in this 5-year capital plan, and so we've built plans within this to fit within that revenue. And so, of course, there are some needed items that are not reflected on this plan because the revenue does not support it. So there's some unfunded capital needs, and we'll talk about those very briefly. So when we look at the capital plan, and you should have, let me just pull it up on the screen within your packet as well, the actual 5-year capital plan. Okay, so the actual 5-year capital plan looks like this, and I just want to make sure each of you have that and can see that. All right, so within the plan, and I'm just going to go back to the presentation. So within the plan, the tax roll does grow, but it grows at a slower rate in the out years. So over the past couple of years, our tax roll has grown by, let's see, in FY15, it grew a little, up almost 8.5%. And then in FY16, it grew about 7.3%. So in FY16, it continued to grow, but that amount of growth dropped off just a little bit. So in FY17, we are assuming a pretty conservative 5% growth in the tax roll. And that's the number that you see built into the FY17 tax roll revenue on the plan. So a 5% growth in the tax roll in the first year, and then we have a 4% growth the next 2 years of the plan, and a 3% growth the next 2 years after that. So of course, within our plan, we are going to take a conservative approach to revenue growth within the plan. If something better than that happens, then of course we'll revise our estimates and give you an updated capital plan based on what that shows. But we do believe that it's a pretty solid estimate based on you know, what conservatively might happen within the market over the next 5 years. So are there any questions about that piece?
Ms. Morgan. As I'm reading this, what I see is essentially that we can pay for Bonita because we're rolling off some debt. Is that right?
Well, when you say pay for it, you mean fund the debt service? Is that what you're speaking of? Yes. In the plan, there is actually debt service built in for 2 high schools, which is the South, LLL, and the East, which, so debt service for both of those high schools are built into this plan as you see it here.
Yeah, that's because we're rolling off some debt. We've paid off some debt, correct?
Yes, within the 5 years, we'll continue to pay down some of the obligations that we have out there now, but also it's because, you know, our tax revenue is increasing as well.
Okay,
So,
but we don't have anything else in there. So we have, how many schools are we talking about in the 5-year frame that we need?
okay, all right, you want to get me to that part of the presentation, so
Sorry, okay, okay, okay.
we can go, okay, so.
I'll wait.
No, we're talking about 4 schools that are needed in the next 5 years. We've got 2 high schools, which we've built in, and I put in here 2 middles conservatively, one in the east and one in the south. We have talked before about which type of school would be needed first, whether it be a middle school in the east needed first or an elementary school in the east needed. The middle school is the more expensive of the 2, so I just called them both middles because conservatively that would be the most expensive proposition for us. But 4 within the next 5 years, we have 2 as far as debt service is concerned built into this plan that you are looking at. Okay. Pico, as far as the rest of the revenue is concerned, because I do want to be clear, the assumptions that we built into the plan as far as revenue, because that drives what else happens in the plan as far as, you know, what else gets spent. So our impact fees, we assume that they remain at a reduced rate in the entire 5-year window. That may not be completely accurate. It does, of course, depend on what the Board of County Commission decides to do, but we are at that reduced collection rate for impact fees at this point, and we assume that it's going to stay like that within the 5-year window. And if that changes, of course, we'll be having conversation about that and, you know, revising at that point. But conservatively, we feel that that's probably a good assumption to make. And then for PICO, which is the state money that we receive, and we did receive about $1.5 million in the FY17 state's budget. We're anticipating that we'll receive $1.5 million. However, that is pretty shaky from year to year as to whether districts are going to receive it or not. Remember, for many years before last year, we didn't receive any at all. So we assume that we'll receive that in FY17, and then we don't assume that we're going to receive any of that for the years on out. So, so those are the revenue assumptions that we've made in the plan, and then we've built some items in the plan that we'll be funding for the next 5 years that I want to go into detail on at this point. So, while we're talking about what's built into the plan, we also want to talk about the vision that I believe that we all share for the district in terms of what we would, what we have, and then of course what we would like to see. So as far as our vision for the district, of course, we need a seat for every child. Our 1.5% to 2% growth rate continues, and we project will continue out for the next 5 years. So based on that, as of course Ms. Morgan was just asking, we have 4 schools that are needed in the next 5 years. Of course, we want to prevent overcrowding in our schools. And we have 2 schools, the 2 high schools, built into debt service in this plan within the next 5 years. Now, if we want to talk about our vision or what we would like to see, then our goal would be to at least partially fund schools as we go to reduce our debt load. So that's as far as the plan as we have it now within the next 5 years, what we have built in. So then, of course, the vision would be not only a seat for every child, but a state-of-the-art school for every child. So within the capital plan, our technology is a big part of that, which includes modern learning tools for every child, a stable technology infrastructure, which we're of course, within our learning models becoming increasingly dependent on, and the ability to scale that with growth, because we're going to be adding 1,500 to 2,000 students every year. So in terms of what we have built into the capital plan right now, existing within the next 5 years, in technology, what that gives us is a 1-to-1 program at our secondary schools, which you all are very familiar with. It gives us modern Wi-Fi infrastructure so that those devices can be used. It gives us modern TV studios that many of our schools utilize. It gives us our tech and career ed labs to be able to service those programs that we have in our schools. And it gives us the Atlas structure, so that is those the presentation of the technology in our classrooms that includes the smart board, audio enhancement, projection, things like that. So that was through our Atlas project that we did throughout the district. So what we have built into technology in the plan gives us all those things, and we believe that that is a solid technology background that we have built into the plan that we'll be able to fund over 5 years. If something different happened with revenue and we had a better picture as far as that is concerned, we would like to do better in several areas. So for example, some improved infrastructure. We'd like to reduce our replacement cycle for some of our technology infrastructure from 7 to 9 years down to 4 to 5 years. And that would be able to provide us with some agility for modern infrastructure and security. So we would be able to do that if a revenue picture was different. We'd be able to improve our network bandwidth. So that's another area where it could give us some increased reliability and increased simplicity within our technology infrastructure if we were able to do that. Some software implication, we could strengthen our instructional and our administrative software portfolio. And then we could also look at the next level of classroom in terms of right now we have that Atlas structure with the smart board, the audio enhancement, and the projection. Technology is changing in the way that our teachers use it So potentially in the future we could be looking at some different designs given some additional additional revenue or additional a change within our revenue structure. So It's kind of like I wanted to give you a picture of what we've got, what we're building within our capital plan, which is solid, and then what another potential vision could be if things were a little bit different. So we want to make sure that we're providing those tools for our children to learn in the way that they best receive it. Okay. In terms of facility, of course, we want a world-class facility for every child. We'll talk a little bit about what's built into this capital plan in terms of our maintenance and maintenance infrastructure. We have plans in this capital plan to address our most urgent needs for things like roofing, painting, major HVAC replacements, alarm systems, major plumbing repairs, indoor air quality, major safety issues. So those types of things are built into the plan, and we do believe that our maintenance plan is relatively solid over the next 5 years. But there are several things that if we had the opportunity to do, we would. So for example, planning and funding major renovations on our oldest facilities. We have several facilities out there that could be up for a major renovation or rebuild, and we spend some additional dollars in those facilities that, you know, in the long run, we may not have to if our revenue was a little bit different. In addition, what we could do as far as providing more infrastructure would be more and improved equipment for efficiency. So thinking some of those things for maintenance, custodial, that if we had a little dollars up front, we'd be able to provide those to give us some long-term benefit on that. And then the ability to service more of our schools in some of the major maintenance categories that I've discussed previously. We also want to make sure that we're providing the safest and the most secure environment for each of our children. And of course, within our 5-year plan, safety is our #1 concern. It's our #1 priority. So those things that have to be addressed for safety are addressed within this 5-year plan. Okay, they most certainly are. But there are some additional things that we could do as far as security systems, cameras in those areas, if we had the opportunity to do so. So it really is about the vision of that facility in terms of creating ideal learning environments in each of these categories that we've listed here. Some of these things are built into the plan. We would have the opportunity to potentially do more if revenue turns out to be different within our upcoming years, either because the assumptions in the plan have changed or something different happens. So world-class schools inside and out is definitely what we're looking for in terms of our vision. So in terms of making that vision a reality, we have been and continue to build community partnerships, and some of these people and organizations that are listed on here are just some of the people that we've had the opportunity to share some information with, to educate in terms of what our priorities are within the school district, how capital looks, how it's funded, and some of the things that have happened in recent years to bring us to where we are today. Oh, yes, ma'am.
A year ago, when I was board chair, the infrastructure task force on the Horizon Council was meeting. Have they met in the last year? To your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge, but that certainly doesn't mean that they haven't. You know, we were in touch with them at that point in time and went to visit with them, I think 3 times, if I'm not mistaken, to give some information. I'm not sure that what has happened after that.
Thank you.
So what we would like to do for the 2017 year is we want to, of course, we're communicating with you all on this capital plan, and we want to make sure that you all are in agreement with the things that we have built in here, in that we have a common message, because what we would like to do is take the FY17 year and really concentrate on communication and education of our budget, you know, just creating those communication tools and those communication avenues that, of course, will be beneficial to us. So it kind of tags along with the earlier presentation that you have, but we want to make sure that we're reaching out and educating our stakeholders as much as we can. So we're going to work with our communications area to take advantage of all of these different avenues and mediums, the website, social media that the school district participates in, to be able to create easy to use, and understandable budget content that people can quickly consume and easily pass along. We want to make sure to bring our student groups into this, so when we have a ready-made kind of audience there that should be able, that is ready to consume that and ready to get excited about some of the things that we're doing within the school district, our future educators of America and future business leaders of America, we see a very good connection with that in terms of being able to disseminate this information and getting people on board as far as supporting the district and the initiatives that we have. And then continue community education with our chambers of commerce, our business community, those in social services, our government officials. We want to make sure that we're making a concerted effort in FY17 to really take the opportunity to just educate, to make sure that people understand what's built into this budget and give them the opportunity to give us some feedback on what potentially they would like to see or what they would like to know if we're not providing that. In addition, we wanted to make sure that we pointed out some of the things that we've done over the past couple years to help our capital situation. So the reduced transfer from capital to operating, and Mr. Toiber, of course, we've had, has had some discussions at the table and made it a point to talk about what we needed to do there. So that transfer from capital to operating, that used to be a larger number, used to be to 20 million at one point. We reduced that in half, and we continue that, and that reduced transfer continues in this 5-year capital plan that you have received. We're trying to create new revenue sources, and you all have had a hand in approving or, in talking about the new policy for advertising and naming rights, and we'll begin that process. We're trying to create funding efficiencies through the evolution of technology. So, of course, our technology area, as technology changes and grows and things become cheaper, they're trying to take advantage of new technology to do some of the same things or better things that we've been doing for either the same or lower cost, which is one of the reasons why we've been able to accommodate the things in technology that I mentioned earlier within the funding that we have. So they continue to try to squeeze the dollar on that. And then concentration on efficiency increasing projects. So the things that we have built into the plan hopefully will bring us some return as we try to replace HVAC systems. Those hopefully will save us some money in electricity, and so we should be bringing some of that return back into the budget. And so those are some of the things that in our maintenance area, I know that they try to concentrate on doing. So that in a nutshell is our capital plan, talking about what the reality is at this point, what the vision is, what we have built into the plan, and what's not built into the plan, and then what our goals would be for FY17 in terms of continued communication of the plan. There's one thing that I forgot to mention. If you look at the first page of the capital plan, where it's got the overview with all the revenue and a summary of all the expenses, at the end of that 5-year window, the very bottom right corner, you'll see the number reserves at the end of that 5-year window. At this point in the plan that you have, that reserves at the end of the 5 years is about $56.7 million, which is a little over 9% of total revenue. Now, the recommendation for us is that the reserves stay between 5 and 10%. So we're at 9. We can have a conversation about that and decide where we kind of want that to land. If we just determine that, yes, we can drive down a little bit, drive that reserve down a little bit, then we have a little bit more room in the plan to do some things. If we want to continue to stay where we are, then that is where we are. And we put that there because that's kind of the indication that we have received from you in the past, that about that spot is where you're going to want us to be. So.
Ms. LaRiviere.
Okay. So, as you're going through, and by the way, thank you for you and your staff for the development and the thoroughness of it. So I want to start off by saying that up front.
Thank you.
But, and here's the but, it has nothing to do with you, but it has to do with some situations that I know that we are in. There was the note of creating state-of-the-art schools. Right now, because of funding, I know that we had to put a stop for Veterans Park Academy of the Arts for their auditorium several years ago, like the 2007, 2008 time period. That was put off. If I send my student to North Fort Myers Academy of the Arts, they have sewing machines. They have a theater with a full tech and with all the components there. If I go to Veterans Park Academy of the Arts, that's not there. If I go to Bonita Springs Center for the Arts, it's not there. If I go to Cypress Lake Middle Center for the Arts, it's not there. And so one of the components that I would like to see within it, to let people know of where we are with needs, that's just one example of an area where we don't have that equitable piece for the state-of-the-art schools. And then the other one that I know of, I know there are three schools that are scheduled for tear down and rebuild. And I think we need to be very clear about letting people know that we are in a situation where there are schools that are in need of that. And that, so those are components that I would like to see highlighted. And that's just throwing it out there so that our community, our government officials and others really do see what our needs are.
And I think Dr. Atkins has addressed the equality and equity as far as across the district, to have that uniform throughout the district. I think he's well aware of that's something that we need to continue to monitor and explore.
That's a major chunk of change.
One of the things, just to mention this, it just came to my attention today. We're currently involved in an audit from the Office of Equal Educational Opportunity from the Florida Department of Education, and I had a brief meeting with the folks involved in that audit today, and one of the compliments that they gave our district was the fact that as they go across the district, even with the difference in age among the facilities, that in terms of from an equity perspective, they were pretty impressed with the maintenance of those facilities, even the older ones, and also with the accessibility, for students with special needs and the public and so forth. So that's just a kudos to our facilities crew, our maintenance crew, and our equity crew that makes sure that we're compliant. So it was nice to hear that they were very impressed with our facilities.
Very good, thank you. Anybody else? Ms. Fisher?
Yes. Dr. Desamore, thank you for once again painting a very clear picture for us. And as we look forward to making the vision a reality, I have a question about for naming rights and other new revenue sources, more efficient technology and other efficiency increasing projects. Compared with our need, how will the potential revenue that we can get out of those efforts and strategies compare with what we really need if we're going to continue to grow and build 4 more schools, 2 of which we have some money for in the next 5 years? So what's the difference? What are we left with? What are we lacking still that we need to focus on in educating our business partners in our community?
Well, it's because this whole advertising and naming rights deal will be a different thing for us. We're just embarking on it now. It's difficult to say what the revenue potential could be for it, but because the gap that I mentioned earlier could be $45 million a year, I don't see that one thing being something that could fulfill the gap. If that was what you were asking. So we definitely have to talk about some other things or some different things that could help us do that. So did I answer the question?
However, I do want to say, just, I've had some conversations with folks about this in the community. In fact, yesterday, had a conversation with John Cecil and Marshall Bauer, but John in particular was very excited about the opportunity of naming rights, felt it's something that we could have been, should have been doing a long time ago. Spoke with, should know his name, Carl, FSW, talking about, again, at the university level, they're using naming rights to garner a lot of additional revenue sources, or a lot of additional revenue for their particular school. So I think that we don't know the possibilities there, but universities have certainly been able to leverage this. One of the things I threw out there, I know that the science wing at Fort Myers High School has been a little bit of source of some back and forth between maintenance, Reggie, and Dave LaRosa. We did a cleanup over there about 2 years ago or 3 years ago? 3 years ago. It is it and Cypress, one of the oldest science facilities in the district. It's certainly, and that's
Is the oldest.
Fort Myers is the oldest, and of course that's one of the top high schools in the nation. And then we have a science facility that's subpar. But if you throw out the idea of what are the possibilities of alumni and other people in the community coming around the idea of renovating a science wing at Fort Myers High School, I bet you would be astonished at the amount of people that would rally around that effort. They decided to do it at Riverdale, much to the chagrin of some folks, but they put together a wrestling facility at Riverdale and earned it all on their own without a lot of hoopla. We could really get behind this, and not that it would cover the whole gap, but I think that it can cover a significant portion of the gap. The other thing that we're exploring that's not necessarily in this presentation, but there are other things that we can do that are a little bit of outside the box thinking, in terms of, how do we manage our energy? And I think from a performance or a behavior perspective, we probably push that envelope as far as we can, but in terms of some things that we could do with the equipment, I think there are some possibilities that we can explore that we've opened discussions around. I know that Mr. Law and Dr. Desamores have talked about that. He is also looking at ways to update our bus fleet with the use of leases, and we're going to have to get creative to get over this hump. And so you can't leave any stone unturned. And fortunately, we've had a lot of people who really seem to want to help us, and that's been really nice to see.
Ms. Fisher.
So then, continuing on, I'm going to say the name of the boulder, the half-penny sales tax. So potentially, if I remember correctly, you told us that could render us upwards of $50 million a year, depending on the economy, right? And that it could be something that was time certain, for 3 years or 5 years, it could sunset.
Has to be.
And that we would be specifically telling the community exactly what it was going to be used for, right? So going forward then in fiscal year 17, will that be part of the education that we will be providing to our community along with the other stones, like the naming rights and the more efficient technology, to help us? And North Fort Myers Academy for the Arts gets a lot of support from their community. I mean, I know people, myself included, who write them a check every year. However, I don't, are we going to count on that for every one of our schools and their needs? And then is that going to meet the need district-wide? And then aren't we asking people also for money, and not necessarily everybody paying a little and the tourists providing some of that? So I really want to keep the conversation going about helping to educate all of our community members about the value in a half-penny sales tax, so that when it comes time to consider making a decision to put it on the ballot, that we can be well prepared to do so. Thank you.
Anybody else? Ms. Dozier, I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you for your extensive layout of the conditions of the district financially. I appreciate the fact that you tell it like it is. However, there are other things that we haven't talked about today.
Okay.
And there are other opportunities out there to reapportion money, if you will.
I'm sorry, the what?
To reapportion money
Oh,
from
okay.
funding that you have.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, when you have, in fact, I just had the opportunity to meet with Roger Desjardins from the county, and we were talking about some of the opportune ways, and I know that Dr. Atkins was going to talk to you about that.
I have.
don't know whether you've had that
No,
opportunity.
I have. I shared that PowerPoint with her, so we're going to get together and talk further about it.
Okay, and there are some opportunities of how we could recoup, or not recoup, but there's a way that we could actually have sizable amounts of capital dollars. But it's all in a matter of staying within your budget, spending what you have, and not taking advantage, if you will, of the money that you anticipate that you're going to get out of the tax roll. But instead, and let me explain what we were talking about with this, and the county is doing it, and the county is getting a lot of legwork from it. And I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to have this conversation. In fact, they said that they would be more than happy to come and kind of share with all of us what they were talking about. But, pardon me?
That's a good idea.
Well, it's one of the things that we're going to have to do in order to, I appreciate you keeping the conversation going. I know you said you were going to, and thank you for doing that and being a lady of your word, because it is a conversation that, I know we're going to hear repeatedly. But in order to keep the conversation going and maybe have something happen with the conversation, we have got to demonstrate that we are doing things to maximize every single dollar that we get. And some of these conversations that I had, I'm not sure that I would explain it exactly right, but let me give you an example. Okay, when you sell a house, okay, you have and help me out, Greg, if I had my notes here, I know I could do it.
Okay.
Let's say that you get ready to sell a house this year. All right, I have, because of our nice tax assessor, he has assessed my property at a certain rate. My property cannot go up over, a certain amount, and I believe it's 3% over a certain period of time. And
Because of
I've lived in this
homestead.
house. pardon me?
Homestead cap.
Homestead exemption.
Yes, homestead exemption as well. And I've got this cap right down here that I'm paying a low property tax, if you will. So that's not benefiting the district. However, this home's getting a little bit uncomfortable for me, so I'm going to sell this home. And this new person that buys my home, they're not going to get all of those discounts that I've been getting, because now it's going to be assessed on the market of today and not the market of 25 years ago. So this is where I was paying, and this is what the district was getting. This is what the new payment is going to be, and this is what we're going to get. And they can do an analysis to give you approximately how many houses are going to sell, in a given year, but, it fluctuates. But this money from here to here, as I said, that is like anticipated money that we talk about that we're going to spend, and we may not even get it. We may have a flat year where nobody sells a house. So if you've anticipated that money and you don't get it, then, oh my gosh, how are you going to recoup your budget? You've got to figure out a way. You've got to have a plan B on that. I always hear about anticipations, and I like anticipating things. I like anticipating wonderful things, especially at Christmas and especially at Mother's Day. Maybe I anticipate a nice little box, all wrapped up real pretty, but I don't know that I'm going to get it. But let's just say that we took the money from here to here, And we say that we are going to take that money and we're going to pack that away, and that money's going to be set aside strictly for capital expenses. That is what the county is doing right now. That is the way the county is funding much of their capital projects. Now, that's money you anticipated, but you didn't get it the first year. Now, the second year, you'd get it. But what is that doing to the public? That is demonstrating to the public that we are trying to maximize every single dollar we have. Now, I'm not going to sit here and bore all of you with this because Mr. Diggerlake can do a much better job of boring us than I can. So, and he's so articulate with it and really gets you to where you understand what he's talking about. So I'm not going to talk about just the sale of new homes and how that plays into this, because that plays in as well.
Yes.
But I think that's one of the things that we never hear about, that we've got to hear about. Because as we want to continue Ms. Fisher's conversation, we've got to have first, just like Dr. Atkins has said, we're not ready to go out yet. We've got to look at every possible solution out there with every dollar we have. And once we do that and we still don't have the dollars necessary, guess what? Then we can go out to the public. But we've got to show them in the long run. And we also have to have some continuity. I think all of you know what I'm talking about, continuity. And I think you're going to be around for a long, long time, you know, and that's the continuity I'm talking about. And so I had to put that out here too. Nothing disparaging to, you know, to anything that you've said, but as a person who has to answer to the taxpayers, I have to do that. You don't have to. You know, you have your job and you have your office, but my office is a revolving door to every taxpayer in Lee County, and as well as all the other 5 members, and it'll soon be 7 members that have got to answer to those individuals out there. And while I appreciate Mr. Fox coming forward and saying that, you know, he turned around an entire group of people that were opposed to it, I've heard from some of them that didn't agree with your statement. So, you know, you may have anticipated, or just like that little package I'm anticipating for Mother's Day, I'm going to get a little package about this big. You may have thought, just because everybody was kind and generous and asked you good questions and didn't paint you into a corner, that you had all of their support. But I have heard from a couple of people that were there, and that's not the case, because I did go back and ask after I heard that. So, you know, we are continuing to look for, I think every one of us sitting at this dais is continuing to look for ways that we can maximize what we have, that we can also demonstrate to the public that we are doing a good job with the tax dollars that we have, and that if we do need more, I think at that time, if we can paint this picture, I think at that time, that's when the community would embrace us. Thank you.
One of the conversations that we just recently had in cabinet, and this was more around operational dollars than it was capital, but they're still related. It was a conversation around, you know, we do a lot of things in this district, and it takes a lot of people to do those things. But, you know, one of the concerns that I had is about being able to do all of the things that we're asked to do with a degree of quality that we need to do them. And so ask the question, should we not consider maybe doing less things but of higher quality, and meaning with less people but higher quality people? You know, keep the high quality people, do less things but do them of the higher quality. So, you know, asking, and this was thoughts at 2:15 in the a.m. in the morning that I, you know, just kind of, you know, one of those when you wake up and you have these ideas and you write them down. So I had to come and share them with cabinet, and they had to put up with it. So I apologize to them. But anyway, the idea is that as you're looking at your divisional budget and your department budgets, have that frame, you know, look at it with that frame of mind, so that when you're looking at what I do in my department, maybe I need to look at it with, I would need to hold on to my high quality people and do what we really need to do, but do it really, really well, and then let go of some of the other things. So that's what they're working on right now. So.
Ms. LaRiviere.
Well, and just one thing that I'm not sure if everyone on the board is aware of the fact that Dr. Desamore has been meeting with Mr. Desjardins and getting, he's been working with her on how you look at the budget and how you try to maximize it to the best of your ability. It would be, but in listening to Mrs. Dozier, I don't know that we often get any excess or some money came through that we did not anticipate, or that doesn't happen to us. But I was wondering if it would be nice if there were some way that we could say, okay, there's this much money that we did not spend this last year. So this much money, so then because we did not spend it, this money went into, and where it's definitely allocated where it goes. Did it go towards the debt service, or did it go into investments? But I was wondering if that might be something the public might want to see how we handled those funds.
Yeah, so yes, we could have a conversation about that. So generally in the capital plan, when you look at that bottom number on the front page in the bottom, we'll say it says carry forward or reserve for future projects. That's the number from year to year that remained unspent. And then, so that carries over into the next year, and then you see what the reallocation is in the next year until you get down to the end of the 5 years, which is that $56.7 million number, that at the end of the 5 years, that's what remains unspent.
So for John Q. Public, it would be nice if there was a graphic, something
Right.
that was a pictorial piece,
Right.
that was a quick look at, that can show that.
Yes, and that would be, okay, so that would be an idea that I'll write down from one of those, like we said, like how are we educating the public and how are we sharing information with them about this? So that would be one idea of that in terms of what's a good way to describe that to people in a way that they would easily consume it and understand it.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Desamore.
Okay, thank you.
Now moving to board attorneys and superintendent comments. I'll start with you, Ms. LaRiviere.
Oh, let's see, it's been a busy couple of weeks and it's gone by fast. I've had the pleasure during this last few weeks to meet with different community members, also meeting with some members of staff and looking at different initiatives. We have community members with ideas that want to do some partnering with, for example, the Alva School, and some potentials for some grants they're looking at to go along with their agriculture, science, environmental program. And as I'm meeting and talking with people in District 5, people are already asking questions about where will the next high school be located. And so people are wondering where that location is going to be, and they're excited and they're ready to start talking about that. I've also, in conversations with staff, and it first started with, I sent a message to Ms. Ralph saying, it talked about when we had our reading plan, and they had done the look at the comprehensive reading plan, and it made a comment about UDL. And so I emailed Ms. Ralph and I said, what is UDL? Well, I've learned about what UDL is. It's Universal Design for Learning, and had the opportunity to go to different websites and other places to just see what that component is and the possibilities that the training for that would bring. And actually talked with a staff member who was already through Fiddler's program, has been trained through Train the Trainer, and is trained for doing some of that training. So it's been, my love for curriculum and teaching and instruction will never die. And so when I understand what UDL is, then it helps me understand anything that's brought forward. Had the pleasure of attending the parent forum. It was wonderful. Our staff members were articulate. They were available. They were absolutely amazing for the parents and other community members that came that evening. The energy was great, and I had the pleasure of, in one situation, had to do with high school, and questions parents had regarding high school and preparation for beginning that high school journey. And Mary Lynn Rodriguez's daughter volunteered as a beginning freshman to share her experiences and what would help parents along the way to work with her students. So it was engaging. I'm looking forward to the next one. And other people I think we do have something that we can take and move to different parts of the community, so more people will be able to be involved with that engagement. And so, big thank you to every staff member, and if I go through and try to name all of them, I know I will forget someone. But our district staff did an absolutely amazing job of helping to meet the needs of all in attendance. And Dr. Atkins, you did a wonderful job in sharing yourself to some people who had never had the opportunity to get to know you. And as you talked about creating our standards, and as Ms. Ralph was talking about our scorecard, people started to see some exciting things that are developing. And it just really, it made people feel very, very secure and good about what's happening. We're not perfect, but it gave them a good, they felt good about where we're headed. So thank you.
Thanks.
That's it?
And that's all I'm going to share.
Ms. Morgan.
Okay, I neglected to mention at the last board meeting in my comments, my visit to Millie Sauer's journalism class. I don't know if you all remember, but we had front row of students here during one of our briefings, and I had a meeting for an entire class within a day or so of that meeting, and I got to tell you, those kids, they really paid attention. Mary Fisher's comment on sales tax was quoted to me. They wanted to know more about it. We went back and forth for a good hour, and it was all about the content of the meeting, and then a little bit about, actually quite a bit about, how the student representative got to be here. 2 students came up and asked how they could submit their application for next year. And so the reason I still wanted to bring this up is that typically I get to meet with the elementary kids when it's Dr. Seuss week, and I get to read, but I rarely get an opportunity to meet with a middle school class or a high school class, and I was really jazzed by meeting with these kids. So this is my invitation to middle school and high school teachers. I would love to come talk to your class someday, just to talk about what we do on the board and answer questions, because I really had a great time. I hope they did too. Finance Advisory, Mark Moore presented to committee members with a brief review of school choice and transportation to date. He did a terrific job describing administration initiatives to address both school choice and transportation limitations and concerns. It was very, very well received by the committee. I think they are finding that the presentations that come from staff provide a lot of quality information. The committee is currently discussing the formation of a Lee County School District Foundation to generate capital for school construction and maintenance. The conversation they were having about school bus replacement has been put on hold until Bill Law has an opportunity to review his operation and come and report to them. At our next meeting, they will be getting an update from Don Huff on the status of district property owned and needed for future seats. And they will meet with Rita Effing to talk about expanding student career and tech ed opportunities to include on-site internships. And one of the things that got them thinking about it was the suggestion that, why aren't we using the bus depot as a site for tech ed? I went to the Strategic Planning Steering Committee meeting last week. Dr. Adkins briefed everybody quickly on the plan, but specifically emphasized that his particular target areas, one being student assignment and the other being staff hiring, retention, and development. The group got very excited with the presentation, and we weren't able to finish our work, but there was a lot of good conversation. Last night, I went to the Hillmeyer Tremont Athlete Scholarship Dinner. And, and it's always great to hear the students talk, and it's great to have them introduced by their teachers. But the interesting thing last night was there was a student who got a scholarship 19 years ago who got up and spoke about his career path since the time that he received the scholarship. And it wasn't a straight path, and it wasn't always an easy path, but it was an extraordinary path. And he is currently an assistant DA in Lee County. So 19 years later, he's paying it forward. So, those kinds of things really get you.
Make you feel good.
So anyway, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Ms. Dozier.
Thank you. I've already talked about meeting with the county manager. I've met with several parents and had several conversations around, I'm sure all of you have as well, around the student assignment initiative since everybody's beginning to get their assignments. I also attended, I think it was last week, the LAEA secondary student invitational art at the Alliance of the Art. They have that every year. 2 weeks before that was the elementary one. And I've got to brag a little bit. My daughter actually had a student that won the overall, and because the student was selected as the congressional winner, the student will go on to Washington and get to go to a reception with students from all around the United States. Which is really exciting. In fact, this is the second year in a row that she's had that winner, which is, I know she was extremely excited, my daughter, to have 2 students in a row. That's really unheard of. And I also attended the Hillmeyer Tremont dinner. We owe a big thank you to this group that began 19 years ago. They put on this banquet that's second to none in the county. They give millions of dollars in scholarships to our students. Every one of the 5 students last night that received a scholarship, they were handed a check for $20,000. And this is money that this group has been, it's a very small group actually, but they have a couple of fundraisers during the year, and they put the money back into the community. And, like Ms. Morgan said, there was someone that he was the inaugural winner that received the award, and they decided that, they would invite him back because he's here in town. And it was really heartwarming to hear him speak. And at the end, I had a very long conversation with him because I had gone with Miss Sam, as everybody calls her, and he actually had played ball under Coach Sam, and so, I get into all those conversations. But then all of a sudden, I feel this little tap, tap, tap on my shoulder, and there was a student of mine, in fact, Larry Hart's nephew, that said, "Do you remember me?" And I looked at him, and he now has no hair on top and a lot of hair here. And I said, "I recognize the eyes." And then all of a sudden I realized who it was. And so he and I had a great conversation. And he said, when I was younger and you used to talk about, I said, "You're still young, be quiet." He said, "But when I was younger and you used to talk about giving back to your community, I didn't understand what you meant. I didn't know what that was all about." He said, "Tonight it's like a light bulb came on." And he's another success story. He said, "I didn't know what I wanted to do. I went off to one college, and it was a big college." And he said, I knew that it was not right for me, so I ended up going to a college where there were very small people." Anyway, he got an MBA, and he's now working with LESAR. In fact, he's their money person, and he's behind computers. And I told him, I said, I ride by there all the time. I said, "I'm going to stop in and come in and see you one day." But it was just, that's always such a warm event, wonderful event to see the kids. And one little girl sat there, in fact, she was from South, and she sat there and she rocked back and forth the whole time that the teacher was talking about her. Rock, 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 rock. She's a twin. And, you know, I knew as she was rocking, this little girl is scared to death. She is so frightened. She is absolutely just, you know, and you just wanted to just reach up and just grab her, you know, and say it's okay, you know. But when she got up there, in fact, the paper had a beautiful article about all the students this morning and how she, you know, she literally couldn't even get through her speech because she just broke down crying. And it was just a wonderful event. I also have to talk about dental insurance for just a minute. I'm just going to talk about it for just a minute. I don't know what the answer is, and I think I got an email back from you saying we might look at some kind of a model about multiple choices for people. I've received a letter from a dental office that I had nothing to do with, but she was laying out all the employees and all the things that had happened to them, that we were misrepresented on this insurance that we had, and blah, 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 blah. Then I go in for a cleaning for my own dental insurance. And boy, and I love Debbie, who does the office, and she's the office manager there, and she just hit me right in the face like a bunch of bricks. And she said, Jeannie, I want you to know that, and they have a lot of district employees that use that particular office. And she was talking about how the insurance was some of the worst insurance that we've had as far as dental. And she says, you know, I've been processing claims and doing dental insurance for a long time. So I just want y'all to be aware that this is out there and this is happening. So I've already talked to Dr. Atkins about it. I can only talk to you about it when we're at the table, because it will be something that will come before us. But I want you to be aware that there are some issues with this dental insurance that we have. And while we don't pay anything out of the district, and that was one of the big selling points, you know, we don't pay anything. Well, we don't pay anything. Our employees do, and it's on the backs of them that, you know, there are problems. So anyway, also, I had a teacher from Fort Myers High that wrote me an email, and I wrote her back. In fact, I believe she sent it to all of us. I'm not sure. But I read the article with, I was very, very, all of us realize that teacher retention, hiring teachers, is something that is big. And it's not just a little problem in Lee County or in the state of Florida. But after reading this article, it is something that is nationwide. Right. So not only are we competing for teachers to come to the Sunshine State and the beautiful Southwest Florida and the beaches and all that, but we're competing with, you know, California. We're competing with the states all across the United States. Mm-hmm. And some of the things that she said in her email to me really hit home. She said, you know, there are some things that y'all could do that would make things a lot easier for teachers. And as I sat there and I thought about it, and I started having a conversation with myself and thinking, you know, that is so true. And so what I'm asking all of you is, I would like to see us form a committee of teachers, and, you know, each one of us, like our advisory committee, this would be an ad hoc committee that would only have one, you know, specific thing to do. And that would be to look at things that are going on in the schools. How can we eliminate some of their problems? How can we help them? How can we make I've heard so much about morale being low, and even though everybody's very happy that you're here, just because of the animal that is existing from all the mandates that come down the hill, and everything gets bigger and bigger and bigger as it rolls down the hill. If there's any way that we could form this ad hoc committee and get teachers, and each one of us have 3 or 4 appointments, and let them get together, let them have it, say, okay, here you go. Now, you know, we're going to let y'all talk about it. We're going to let you look at it, sort things out, come up, brainstorm, come and report to us some things that we can do. Because according to her email, there are things that we could do as a board that wouldn't cost anything. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if there are things that we can do that won't cost anything, by George, why aren't we already doing them? You know, and sometimes, you know, I've always heard the person that is closest to a decision are the people that sometimes have the best ideas. So, you know, I'm going to admit, I've been out of the classroom for a while. I go back, you know, occasionally for visits and all that, but that's not the same as being in the classroom every day. You know, that's totally different. So I would just ask my fellow board members and the superintendent if that would be something that y'all would be interested in us doing, and I'd like to see us put it in place as soon as possible if y'all will agree to it.
Ms. Morgan?
I would like to say that the QUIAC advisory has spent the entire year working on a focus area 4, and a lot of what has just been raised, and I also read that letter, read the article, and responded to the writer. A lot of what is discussed in that article has been addressed in depth at QUIAC. I have no objection to creating another committee, but I just think that that group needs to be recognized for the work that it is putting in Focus Area 4 with respect to hiring, retention, and staff
What is
development.
QUIAC? I mean, I don't go by acronyms.
Improvement Advisory Committee.
Quality
Yeah.
Committee, okay.
Yep.
Is there any objection to Ms. Dozier moving forward with Dr. Atkins, putting together, outlining some type of a structure?
I'd like to hear what Dr. Atkins thinks.
Dr. Atkins?
Well, first of all, I think it's a good idea, and for this reason. When I was in negotiations this time, you know, it became, you know, pretty apparent to us that we needed to make some changes in working conditions. So basically what I asked to be done was to literally form a committee between, in this case it was with teachers and administrators, but I challenged the Teachers Association, and Mark and Donna aren't here, they could verify this, to take a leadership role. Okay, they are the teachers, they're the ones that are literally, like Ms. Dozier said, on the front lines. So I said, you all need to tell us what to do when we're working out these PLC guidelines so that we can set working conditions that are that support you in the classroom. So there's an example of one case where, you know, we put teachers in a leadership role. And yeah, Dr. Spiro was one of the folks that helped facilitate that for us. Mr. Mora brought me an idea yesterday, I believe. Yeah, yesterday. And that was that he wants to open up an opportunity for staff in this building that are not management staff, but, you know, technical and you know, the people that do the work to have a voice. So I gave him the green light to forming a committee with those folks. So he's working on that right now. And so that also, I think, supports the general idea that, so I would have no opposition to that. I would say that I do feel we would need to, we would have to involve the association also, because they're the recognized legal bargaining, you know, representative, but also the board in terms of wanting to recommend folks for that committee. So that would be my thoughts on it.
Anybody else?
No, I think it's a wonderful idea. And I thank you, Mr. Mora, for going forward for something like that for the district staff. And it may be something that people need to know that they have a right, they're being heard, whether they are a teacher, custodial staff, whatever. So I believe that we do need to start with the teachers. Thank you, Mr. Mora, for what we're going to be doing with our district staff, and then it would be interesting to see how we could move forward. But
Okay.
I think our teachers are the hardest.
Ms. Dozier, any further comments?
No, in fact, if everybody agrees, I will just work with Dr. Atkins, and I'll come back with some ideas of how we can put the committee in place.
I just had a quick question about that.
Quickly. We got to keep moving on with comments. This is really not the point for this type of dialogue, but please continue.
When is? This is a workshop.
But it's a workshop for on item titles, for titles. This is right now comments on not bringing up new items to be discussed. But again, please continue.
Mrs. Dozier, I was just wondering if, and I don't know where we are with Let's Talk yet, but I was wondering if that could be a vehicle for teachers to give feedback through and get, a considerable number of responses. Just a thought.
Absolutely.
But thank you. Anything further, Ms. Dozier?
That's it, thank you.
Ms. Fisher?
I'll reserve mine for later this evening. Thank you.
I had the Cape Coral Mayoral Scholarship meeting was last Friday. Ms. Fisher sits on that committee. I think I'll leave her to talk a little bit more about that, but that was a great event by Cape Coral. The amount of scholarships, I think, is up to 27 now. That's an amazing organization that they bring forward. Our FTE audit last week, we did the exit review for the FTE audit. It was a phenomenal report by the state. The results were dwarfed the last audit that we had. It was the incident rate was so much lower. The comments, and I quote, our transportation was a flagship mark, which is for the amount of scrutiny the FTE gets for transportation. That is a huge credit to Mr. Morgan and his entire staff and what they do and how they comply. Our biggest issue was our reporting, on-the-job training reporting that was pretty much prevalent across the high schools. Dr. Atkins is making note of that and moving that forward. That was really the only really big issue of any of the issues, but it was a very good report. Dr. Atkins.
I'll be very brief. Just a couple things. Dental insurance, one of the things that Bonnie is working on right now is she's raised this particular concern right up the flagpole to the highest level of that particular company. One of the things she noted is that we've had enrollment because we added this board, proactively took the measure to add that $500 to the benefit. Our employees have been able to access greater number of some of these volunteer benefits, such as dental. So now we have more people that have enrolled in the program. Well, as a result, MetLife has benefited by that, by increased revenue. And so she's saying, look, you guys are ending up with a better deal out of this. You need to do something to fix this problem because this is simply not acceptable. So that's what's happening right now to address the concern that Ms. Dozier brought forward. But then looking forward, I committed the last time, when we had this issue, that the next time that we move forward with an RFP or something like that, that we would structure it in such a way that would allow for multiple vendors for us to consider if we wanted to go that route, because dental has been a sore spot for a long, long time, and so. But I want you in the meantime to know that's what we're doing right now. You received some emails regarding testing situation over at Fort Myers High School. Soretta Ralph has been on it. She has got a phone call into Vince Vergas, who's the Assistant Deputy Commissioner, Division of Accountability, Research and Measure, to try to rectify this situation. It's very frustrating. Yes, we made a mistake, but the frustrating part is that we do not have the flexibility to fix the mistake. So, if we have to literally take this to the commissioner to ask for some way to fix this problem, we will do that. But in the meantime, we're going to operate within the chain, and so she's going to be talking with him probably about 5 real soon here. So. We'll call him right after this meeting, and hopefully we can get that situation resolved. One of you asked for some feedback on recommendations on the impact of the recommendations that came from advisory committee in our decision-making process, so I have that to provide you. And then finally, we continue to get some questions and comments and editorials about LLL. First of all, the most recent one, we would have to say, one thing that I would have to say about that is as it relates to the appraisals that were done, that the company doing the appraisals knew that asbestos had been remediated from the property, so they did that with awareness. that asbestos had been there and had been remediated. So that's the first thing. And second, we're required to do the appraisal in terms of its highest potential value. We can't do a, quote, school district value. It has to be at the highest, which is residential in this case. So that addresses those 2 points. The other thing that continues to come up is this need for a phase 2, and also, being on the national registry. It is not. This asbestos situation was very small in comparison to some of these other more national figures or situations. So as a result, this is considered a state issue. So the State Department of Environmental Protection has jurisdiction here. A phase 2 environmental would not be good use of taxpayer dollars. There were truckloads after truckloads of this stuff removed. If you read the report, and tested, and it's been signed off by the Department of Environmental Protection as a safe site. So to incur extra expense and time is just not in the best interest of taxpayers, particularly when it's been signed off. And I can go into more detail if I need to, but we did send some of the facts, point by point, that had been raised in terms of what the counterpoint was, and this will also be put up on the website, as a lot of things are, like the remediation report itself is up there on the website, so I encourage people to see that. And then we'll probably post this as well, and we'll likely also respond publicly. So just wanted you to know that we had that also in the works. And that is it for my comments.
Ms. Dozier?
All I want to say is, in regard to that, you might want to make those same comments this evening, because I know that there will be some people here tonight that I think have been circulating some information. I've heard that there are going to be some people here, so I think that would be beneficial for them to hear that. I kind of abbreviate some of the stuff that you sent us back in an email, but I think it would behoove us for you to repeat what you said.
Okay.
Mr. Martin?
I have no comments this afternoon, thank you.
Okay. For good of the order, see none, I will adjourn this meeting. We will be back at 6 o'clock for our school board action meeting. This meeting is adjourned.